Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre. Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément. Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern. Madame le député Labbé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier. Monsieur le député Luce.
Présent.
Madame le député Dublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Morel. Madame le député Lehegara.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves.
Présente.
Madame le député Gardner.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Forst.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham. Madame le député Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Osef. Monsieur le député Balash. Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Poré. Monsieur le député Wall.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renouf. Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune. Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howell.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Binet.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Curtis.
Présent.
Madame le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Andrews.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi le gouvernement et la puissance de la terre, pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, et de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien et au soulagement du peuple, qu'il te plut de commettre à la soin. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie pas en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi est le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Sir, the Connétable de Saint Laurent has delayed you to a medical appointment, but she will be along as soon as possible once complete.
Excusez.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Sir, Connétable St. Pierre is attending a funeral. He might be able to join later.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Malade.
Vous jurez que Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le député Southern.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Tadier.
Malade.
Vous jurez que Monsieur le député Tadé est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le député Morel.
Malade.
Vous jurez que Monsieur le député Morel est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le député Farnham. Monsieur le député Joseph.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Balash.
Il est malade, ça.
Vous jurez que Monsieur le député Balash est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé. Madame le député Jeune.
Deputy Jeune is away on State's business.
State's business.
L'Assemblée est long, Monsieur le Président.
Les États sont constitués. I'm sure members will join me in welcoming His Excellency to the Chamber this afternoon. In the last week, our community has suffered two major shocks, which have left us, as I say, deeply shocked, moved, and saddened. The Chief Minister will make a statement about these things shortly, but I wanted to say that I know how deeply these events have been felt throughout the island and how we all feel a desire to show our solidarity and support and indeed our sadness with those and for those who have lost their lives, their loved ones, and their homes. There will this week, on Wednesday evening, be the opportunity to do this. Usually, the Assembly stands in silence to honour past members and current members and past members who have died. But in these exceptional circumstances, I would like to invite members to join me in a minute's silence to show our respect to those who have lost their lives. May they rest in peace. Very well. A number of subordinate actions have been laid under Section B. A number of documents have been presented or laid as described in the consolidated order paper under Section 2, or I beg your pardon, C. The following matters have been lodged under Part D. Proposed Government Plan 2023-26 P97 Second Amendment lodged by Deputy Kovac of St Saviour. The same statutory instrument, Fourth Amendment lodged by the the Council of Ministers. Proposed Government Plan 2023-26 P97 Sixth Amendment lodged by the Council of Ministers. Proposed Government Plan Ninth Amendment Guernsey Cooperation lodged by the Council of Ministers. Proposed Government Plan 10th Amendment changes to proposed heads of expenditure lodged by the Council of Ministers. Proposed Government Plan 11th Amendment ring-fence stamp duty lodged by Deputy Andrews of St Helier North. Proposed government plan, 12th amendment. Jersey Business, lodged by Deputy Scott of St Brelard. Proposed government plan, 13th amendment, enhanced capital allowance, lodged by Deputy Luce of Grouville and St Martin. Proposed government plan, 13th amendment, enhanced capital allowance, lodged by the Council of Ministers. Proposed government plan, 14th amendment, residential land withholding tax, lodged by Deputy Luce. Proposed government plan, 15th amendment, off-island medical treatment, lodged by Deputy Rob Ward. Proposed government plan, 15th amendment, off-island medical treatment, lodged by the Council of Ministers. Proposed government plan, 16th amendment, multi-morbidity GP consultations, lodged by Deputy Southern of St Helier Central. Proposed government plan, 17th amendment, extend existing bus pass scheme to all students in full-time education, lodged by Deputy Alves of St Helier Central. Proposed government plan, 18th amendment, free GP visits for children and young people, lodged by Deputy Alves. Proposed government plan, 19th amendment, suspension of high-value residence, lodged by Deputy Mezek of St Helier South. Proposed government plan, 20th amendment, hospital funding, lodged by the Council of Ministers. Proposed government plan, the 21st amendment, Gas Place Primary School site, lodged by the Council of Ministers. Proposed government plan, 21st amendment, play.com site, lodged by Deputy Coles of St Helier South. Proposed government plan, 21st amendment, second amendment, lodged by the Connétable St Helier. Proposed government plan, 22nd amendment, GST on sanitary products, lodged by Deputy Feltham of St Helier Central. Proposed government plan, 23rd amendment, removing the upper earnings caps, lodged by Deputy Mezek of St Helier South. Proposed government plan, 24th amendment, St Helier Urban Renewal Programme, including Havre de Pas, lodged by the Connétable St Helier. Proposed government plan, 24th amendment, lodged by the Council of Ministers. Proposed government plan, 25th amendment, exempting property developers from stamp duty higher rate, lodged by the Council of Ministers. Proposed government plan, 26th amendment, rental room tax relief, lodged by the Council of Ministers. Proposed government plan, 26th amendment, lodged by Deputy Rob Ward of St Helier Central. Draft Finance 2023 Budget Jersey Law, 4th amendment, lodged by the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Our hospital project reporting, P109, amendment, lodged by the Connétable St Helier. Our hospital project reporting, 2nd amendment, lodged by the Connétable St Helier. Draft Marriage and Civil Partnership Amendments, Jersey Law, lodged by the Minister for Home Affairs, that's P112. Draft Proceeds of Crime, Consequential and Miscellaneous Jersey Regulations, P113, lodged by the Minister for External Relations and Financial Services. Under E, there is the notice of the withdrawal of a lodged proposition under Standing Order 34.1, the Our Hospital Project Reporting P109 Amendment, lodged by the Connétable of St Helier. Answers have been tabled to written questions under I, and we come now to oral questions.
Sir, I wonder if I may at this time, sir, seek the leave of the Assembly to debate P109 as the first item on the agenda. So I ask that now, so if the Assembly do agree to do it, so members will have time to get speaking notes in order. So, and I wonder if it's appropriate to do that at this stage.
So, if I may, the government has responded to the request of the Deputy and informed all States members that we're in agreement with his request.
Well, it seems that if it's not likely to give rise to a significant debate, it's appropriate to deal with that as a matter of practicality now. So you propose that P109 is dealt with as the first item of business after questions, etc.
I do, sir. Thank you.
Is that seconded? Does any member wish to speak? All those in favour kindly show. Those against? Very well, Deputy Farnham, we will deal with P109 as the first item of public business. We come now to questions, oral questions.
Sir, sorry, I had
Yes.
my light on. Before we move to oral questions, I would like to ask the Assembly to consider allowing me to make a statement about the tragic events of the past days. I thought it would be useful for members if I was able to do that and enable them to ask questions so that they could then focus on oral questions and after that, questions without notice, as I think you might understand would be appropriate. But obviously that's a matter for the Assembly.
So you would like, obviously, you've had leave to put a statement, and there will be questions that will follow. You would like it to be dealt with when precisely, Chief Minister?
As the next item, please, right now.
Right now, before we move on to oral questions. Very well. Well, it is a matter entirely for the Assembly. Do you have the statement ready for circulation to members?
Yes, sir, it was circulated this morning and we've recently checked with the Grant.
Right. Well, it seems entirely reasonable. You perhaps are aware, Chief Minister, you will have a fair amount of time available for questions to be asked at various points of the morning because of the way circumstances have turned out. But there is no reason why the Assembly could not agree to take your statement now. So that is proposed. Is that seconded?
Yes, sir.
Any member wish to speak? Those in favour kindly show. Those against? Very well, Chief Minister, please do allow your statement to be taken now.
Thank you, sir. Sir, as you said just a few moments ago, the past days have been some of the most difficult for our island community in recent memory. We've witnessed two tragedies in the space of just 3 days, one at sea and one at land. I'm sure that I speak on behalf of all members in sending my heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of Michael Michieli, Larry Simeon and Jarvis Balagat, who were on board the Lecume 2 fishing vessel that was involved in a collision and sank off the northwest coast of the island early last Thursday morning. We also offer those same heartfelt sympathies to the families and friends of the 5 people who have been confirmed as having died in the explosion at Haute-du-Mont early on Saturday morning. 4 people are still missing following that incident, and with the search now having moved from one of rescue to recovery, we must regrettably be prepared for more bad news in the coming hours and days. We also have a number of families who have been displaced and who are currently coming to terms with a shock of what has happened, having had to leave their homes in an emergency with only the clothes they were wearing. The immediate response of the parish of St Helier and Andiam Homes to support those families was overwhelming and so greatly appreciated. So the thoughts and prayers of every single person in the island are with those affected at these horrific incidents. We will stand with them in support and solidarity, not just now, but in the coming days and months ahead. As members will know, Jersey is a community of seafarers, with so much of our history, culture, and identity intrinsically linked to the fishing industry. We know that the sea can be dangerous, but nonetheless, incidents such as the one we witnessed last Thursday are shocking, unforeseen, and desperately sad. The fishing industry is itself close-knit, as was clearly demonstrated by the speed, nature, and the extent of the rescue effort at sea. The authorities are working to survey and search the collision site, and importantly, to recover the bodies of the 3 fishermen on board the vessel. As independent investigation will piece together exactly what happened, and that picture will eventually become clear. Whilst we wait for these processes to take their course, I know that our community will continue to support the families and friends of the captain and his 2 crew members in whichever way are necessary. So one tragic incident is enough to shake a small community. To have a second within a matter of days is not something we have ever experienced. The devastating explosion at Haute-du-Mont has shocked everyone in the island and around the world. I'm sure that members will have seen the footage, which makes painful viewing, and it's unprecedented for Jersey in modern times. Put simply, most of us will never have seen anything like it. Alongside the ongoing recovery operation, a police investigation into the events that led to the explosion is underway. Again, that investigation will be independent at every stage and will provide the facts of what happened for the families and their loved ones of everyone involved. In times of adversity, and in these cases, disaster, people are often shown at their very best. We'd, of course, rather not have to deal with these events, but how we respond when they happen says a lot about our island community. In Jersey's case, and in respect of both incidents, the island's care, compassion, and community spirit has shone through. It's a light in these dark times. I would like to place on record my thanks and appreciation to everyone who's been involved in and supported the response efforts following Thursday's and Saturday's events. We have been so fortunate, sir, to benefit from the skill, expertise, and generosity of so many professionals, volunteers, and individuals from across the public, private, and charitable sectors, both within and outside the island. I want to particularly thank our neighbours in Brittany, Normandy, the other Channel Islands, and the United Kingdom, who have provided essential equipment and personnel. I have similarly received so many kind messages and offers of assistance and support from within Jersey and further afield, which again shows the great will of everybody to do what they can to help. We now have the Bailiffs Island Appeal to provide a central focus for those who wish to make donations and help to support those involved in both tragic events. Our emergency services train and prepare for these unthinkable incidents, and islanders can be proud of the professionalism that they've shown in responding, and as they can be, to all of our public servants. That response is, of course, ongoing, and will very likely continue for the coming weeks. Events remembering the victims will also continue to take place this week, where we can come together as a community to reflect and to show our respect. And I'm particularly grateful to you, sir, and the Dean for organising the vigil on Wednesday night. I know that the people of Jersey will continue to respond in the compassionate, respectful, and close-knit way that we have seen in the past few days. We will stand together. We will get the answers to what happened, and we will honour the memory of those who've been so sadly lost in tragic circumstances. I'm happy to answer members' questions, being mindful, of course, of the ongoing investigations. And I thank you, sir, for allowing me to offer these words.
Thank you very much indeed, Chief Minister. There is now a period of 15 minutes within which members can ask questions of the Chief Minister on any matters arising out of her statement. Conetable St Helier.
Thank you, sir. And I'm very grateful to the Chief Minister for her statement and fully endorse her sympathy and concern, as well as her thanks to the professionals involved. I just wanted to ask her specifically if she agrees with me that one of the most important sources of voluntary response for these events, particularly the explosion on Saturday morning, has been the island's honorary police services. I know that not just officers from St Helier, but from other parishes have been assisting in manning the cordon zone.
If you could pause there. Could we find out who's gracing us with their voice? And listen done. Very well.
Thank you, sir. I know that officers of St Helier's Honorary Police, assisted by officers from other parishes, have been doing point duty right through the last two nights in freezing conditions. And I hope that the Chief Minister will join with me in thanking them, in particular the Chef de Police of St Helier, who's been coordinating all of this work for their work, and also the members of the public who have been plying the Honorary Police with hot drinks and food throughout this period. Thank you, sir.
Minister.
I thank the Conetable for raising the prolific contributions of our honorary police force, and I would join with him in thanking them for their efforts. The weather has been particularly inclement, particularly over the last night, and those honorary police personnel who welcomed me at the cordon this morning were cheerful, and they're doing their bit in difficult conditions, and we're all grateful to them. And I was particularly pleased that the constable spoke of the voluntary contributions of refreshments to the honorary police. We were quite keen to ensure last night that they were receiving food and refreshment over this period of watch, because it is a long one. And it was particularly impressive, the speed with which all of our emergency services, including the honorary police, stepped up to sweep into action as soon as the tragic incident occurred on Saturday morning.
Very much. Supplemental content?
No, thank you, sir.
Deputy Farnham.
Thank you, sir. May I join the Chief Minister and members in expressing utter shock and sadness at recent events, and indeed take this opportunity, sir, to add my thanks to all of the emergency services and those involved in helping at this terrible and tragic time. As islanders begin to come to terms with what has happened over the last week, islanders are going to want to understand exactly how these tragedies have occurred, sir. And I wonder if the Chief Minister is in a position to update the Assembly as to when inquiries might begin, so we can understand how these terrible incidents happened and what we can do to ensure they never happen again, sir. Thank you.
Thank the Deputy for his question and his warm wishes, which of course I'm sure are extended by all members of the Assembly. As I mentioned in the statement, investigations have begun in relation to both matters. I believe yesterday, once another remote operated vehicle was assessing the site at sea, and of course the findings of that assessment will be passed on to the relevant authorities who are investigating the circumstances of that incident. And on Saturday, the Chief of Police made it very clear that an investigation had been begun into the circumstances of the tragic incident at Haut du Mont. And of course, that matter is ongoing, and it will take some time for evidence to be pieced together and for whatever may happen after that.
Does any other member have any questions? Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. Could I thank the Chief Minister for her words this afternoon, and also for her time yesterday evening as St Heliers South representatives joined her with the Chief of Police and others to discuss what had happened there and what response there would be. The Chief Minister has mentioned both the victims and those who responded to these incidents, both the professionals and volunteers. Could the Chief Minister give us her assurance that those who did respond and will have witnessed some pretty harrowing scenes upon attending these places will continue to be supported and receive whatever support, be that mental health support or trauma support, in the weeks to come, and would she endeavour to update States members on that as it happens?
I thank the Deputy for his question, and of course we will ensure that the well-being of all of those, both the families, the wider community, and particularly those who have responded to these tragic incidents, will be well supported. As the Deputy will be aware, the listening lounge service has been extended in terms of the time so that it's available for members of the community, but there is specific and trained response to support those members of the emergency services who are at the scene.
Connie Tarbison Brillard.
Thank you, sir. Like others, I thank the Chief Minister for her statement and actually attending the on-site to give support to the first responders down there. And I would also endorse the comments made by the previous speaker in terms of the post-trauma support, not only to those first attenders, but those down the line who are having to provide housing for those displaced, those who've lost those who have families, the families of those who've lost their lives, who will be equally traumatised by all these matters. I, so like I'm sure a lot of us, feel completely impotent in these situations. I think we all wish we could do more, and I myself, and I'm sure others, remain, as the members for St Heliers South emphasised early on, ready to give support as and when needed and when requested. Thank you, sir.
Sorry, was there a question that comes in?
So, no, there was no question, sir. Well, I suppose the question could be, sir, will the Chief Minister pass on her request to any States member, should she so wish and require any further support from us?
Thank you, Conatab. And I can reassure every member that their thoughts and desire to support the members of our community are really felt by everyone. It's clear that all States members and members of the public service are keen to do their bit and to pull together. And we certainly feel that, and those wishes have been passed on to everybody that is involved in the operations. The Constable also mentioned, sir, those who have found homes for people who were displaced in St Helier on Saturday morning. It must be said that Andiam Homes, as our government-owned social housing provider, has been incredible in its... The team there have been incredible. They were there at the town hall, ably supported by the parish of St Helier, immediately stepping up, providing compassionate support to their tenants and helping to find them not only a roof over their heads, but as I was told immediately as I arrived at the town hall, that every person had been promised a roof over their heads and a television with which to watch the football. That, I think, showed the sense of compassion and care with which those support services were being demonstrated. And of course, there were other much more practical things that had to be done. But I can really reassure every member of this assembly that their work is being well represented throughout all of our organisations.
Very much indeed. Does any other member? Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Chief Minister, for expressing the feelings that I believe are shared so much within this community regarding these two tragic incidents. And it's good to know that support is being given and that investigations are being carried out. I just wonder, with respect to the tragic collision regarding Ekum 2, whether she would be able to inform us at this stage who will be carrying out the independent investigation into that matter.
Thank you, sir. I believe that there's a marine investigation team that is the professional service that provides that level of investigation.
Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to add my thanks to those of everyone else for the Chief Minister's statement, and also to those that have been involved in helping and supporting with these tragic events over the past week. I've just had some communication from a constituent who's asking whether the Chief Minister can give us some more details around when the fund will be up and running, because it's currently, they've had a look and they can't find anything at the moment. Thank you, sir.
I thank the Deputy and her constituent for the question. The bailiff has kindly agreed to set up the appeal fund. I believe that the usual requirements will be put in place, but perhaps that takes a small matter of time. And I know that members of our community really want to support in every way that they can, and that information will be shared with them as soon as it possibly can be.
It's not for me to interject, Chief Minister, but I'm sure members will understand that if I say that it is intended that it's accessible on the Bailiff's Chamber government website from tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
That's my belief. I'm sorry for interrupting. Does any other member wish to have asked a question? Deputy Rob Ward.
Sorry, so it came from what was just said. The Minister, I stopped in the market just before, and somebody who wanted to offer help. So many people have stopped to offer help. And one of the things I want to offer is just the opportunity to offer a Christmas tree. And the question is simply, will things like that be accepted for those who are perhaps not got that at the moment or maybe facing a difficult time? And if so, I can certainly put you in touch with somebody who wanted to do that and who offered so nicely earlier today. Thank you, sir.
That is so kind, and I know that it's hard for many people to know how to help. We have provided the COVID helpline, which has been slightly repurposed, so that people who particularly either want to find out about members of their family and friends who they're concerned about, but also to express their support, so we can centrally log that. And that is a provision that is available, and I can never remember the telephone number, but it is a matter of public record. The COVID helpline will assist members of the public with those inquiries. On the subject of Christmas trees, I'm afraid that kind member of the community has already other people have been thinking along similar lines. And last night I was with my deputy, the housing minister, delivering some Christmas trees to some of those people who've been displaced, which were kindly donated. And I'm sure, though, that there are plenty of people who will benefit from a little Christmas cheer, because it is certainly a particularly difficult time of year for members, for anybody to experience such circumstances. And so we're really grateful for the kind thought, and I'm sure I'll find a good home for it.
Well, does any other member have any questions for the Chief Minister arising out of the statement? Well, very well, that brings questions to the Chief Minister on her statement to an end, and we now move now to questions with notice. The first question is to be asked by Deputy Rob Ward of the Minister for Children and Education. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. And again, this question comes from a constituent, just as a general question. So will the Minister advise what actions are currently being undertaken to monitor air quality inside schools, including CO2 monitoring? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. Sir, since the pandemic started, 300 CO2 monitors have been distributed to school to monitor air quality. This has allowed school leaders to assess whether further action is required to improve air quality across different areas of the school building. Detailed guidance has been provided to school leaders to explain how effectively use these portable CO2 monitors and what remedial actions can be taken should the devices record high level of CO2. This includes improving quality through improved ventilation or use of air filtration devices.
Supplemental.
Just quickly, sir, can I ask the Minister how we're checking that they're being placed in the right place? The query came from a concern that one of the CO2 monitors was being put centrally within a school, but perhaps into an office, for example. So just to check that there's a double check going on as to that they're just being used appropriately, really. Thank you, sir.
From my understanding, Deputy, for this question, I'm happy to go offices and double check exact framework for checks, but from my understanding, from my conversation with the officers, because during September, October, heading towards the winter, possible cold and COVID, we did have extensive discussions about air filtration and air ventilation. I've been told that the teachers at classes where it was put and also school leaders were trained and they know how to follow it up. Also, I have asked officers, it has been done, all head teachers received email on the 12th of October 22, re-emphasizing the guidance, and also been asked to submit any request for extra air filtration units if this required. We have 50 units on order now. Follow this.
Well, we now come to question 2. The Deputy Andrews will ask of the Chief Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister advise the aggregate cost to the Government of Jersey in 2021 across all ministerial departments from civil servants or other public sector workers travelling overseas whilst fulfilling their duties?
Thank you, sir. The total spend in 2021 was £414,506. This, of course, was a year that was much affected by COVID, and so that total figure, which includes all flights and hotel accommodation that was paid for by the Government of Jersey in that year, was probably a smaller amount than one would see in a normal year.
Supplemental question? Very well. We come down to question 3 that Deputy Messick will ask the Chief Minister. Deputy Messick.
Thank you, sir. Following the results of the latest Opinions and Lifestyle Survey from Statistics Jersey, which showed a growing number of islanders reporting that they are struggling to cope financially, will the Chief Minister outline what action the government will take to tackle the root causes of growing inequality?
Thank you, Deputy, for the question. The survey results published last week indicate that 24% of households identified themselves as finding it either very difficult or quite difficult to cope financially. Over the past 12 years, responses to that question have varied from a slightly higher figure of 26% in 2014 and a lower figure of 18% in 2017. Although there's no specific trend over this period, we can see that between a fifth to a quarter of those surveyed describe their situation in these categories. Last week also saw the publication of an analysis of indicators of material deprivation, which showed encouraging progress in the past decade. Indicators associated with material deprivation decreased in important areas such as overcrowding, unemployment, lack of educational qualifications, and unskilled work. That being said, my government wants Jersey to be a place where everyone can thrive, and we will continue to address these key areas to help to achieve a good quality of life for all islanders. As members will be aware, the first 2 of our common strategic priorities relate to housing and economy and skills in particular, and we have already put more money into people's pockets by agreeing the package of measures that was agreed in our mini-budget back in September. We have also increased the minimum wage. We are increasing the supply of affordable homes and the quality of private sector accommodation. We're developing a well-skilled workforce within a sustainable economic framework, supporting family-friendly policies and support for families, in particular through early intervention. So we are also investing in education and skills. These actions will help to further reduce material deprivation and tackle the root causes of inequality and help all members of our community to thrive.
Supplemental, Deputy?
Supplementary, sir, I slightly disagree with where the Chief Minister went towards the end of that. Raising the minimum wage clearly does address part of the root causes of growing inequality, but not all the other ones she raised did do that, including increasing benefits, which is addressing the symptom rather than the cause of poverty. So could I provide the Chief Minister with a further opportunity to outline some other tangible actions which she will seek to take, which truly do address the root causes of growing inequality and not simply address the symptoms, which can well be a good thing to do in difficult times, but in terms of the long-term desire to see reduction in inequality, don't quite do it.
Sir, perhaps I wasn't clear enough in my response, but I did talk about our commitment to improving education and skills, which are exactly areas that address those root causes by increasing the skill set of members of our community and enhancing their opportunities to work and to thrive. Also, sir, we are most certainly committed to investing in the early years, in family-friendly policies and policies that help to break the cycles of deprivation by working with families, providing them with sustained support that enables them to enhance their way of life and to improve their own circumstances, sir.
Very well, and that brings us to question 4, that Deputy Southern will ask for the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister undertake to provide members with the questions to be asked as part of the consultation process about how the public would propose to pay for health and care services for an ageing but healthy population? And will she outline what measures she proposes to use to ensure that any solutions proposed by the public are based on an informed understanding and not random suggestions with unforeseen consequences? Thank you.
Mr. Minister.
Thank you, sir. As members will be aware, a survey that seeks to understand more about islanders' attitudes to healthcare funding will be distributed to 3,500 randomly selected households. The survey was to be distributed in October and November, but I made the decision to delay until early next year on the basis of feedback provided by members of the public who participated in 2 independently facilitated focus group sessions. They and the Chief Statistician suggested that we should avoid the pre-Christmas period. I am happy to provide the questions to members, of course, and will do so before the survey is distributed. The survey is not proposing solutions to the public. It is asking questions about their attitudes to healthcare funding. And the answers provided by the public will help us as government to develop potential funding solutions for more in-depth consultation later in 2023.
Supplementary, Deputy Salt.
Thank you, sir. The question remains, how is she going to assure herself and us that the questions to be asked are relevant and actually go to the issues about health and care treatment on the island?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Deputy. The questions, many of which are included, are based on standard questions that are used by UK institutions to understand attitudes to healthcare funding. They've been reviewed by the Chief Statistician to ensure that they are open, understandable and non-biased. And we've also welcomed the involvement of GPs in that consultation on how the questions should be phrased. I think we've also want to assure the Assembly that we have also contracted specialist health economists to support our work, to develop these healthcare funding solutions. And in addition to providing detailed financial models to help us better understand future expenditure and revenue requirements, they are also undertaking extensive research of the funding model used in other jurisdictions to support us to make these informed decisions about how we go forward.
Deputy Rob Ward.
Thank you, sir. May I ask the Minister regards the random process of allocation and what process of random will be used? And may I suggest, sir, whether the Minister would use the process of sortition, a sort of stratified sampling, because when that takes a survey like this, it's really important we get a really good view. I wonder if the Minister has considered taking that approach rather than just genuinely random, which may not be on a small population, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Deputy, thank you. What I would like to do is, because I don't have the details of the sampling methodology today, I would be happy to share those with him.
Supplementary. Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. The Minister referred to survey questions seeking to find out the attitude of people towards how to pay for health and care services. Does the Minister understand that somebody's attitude for how much they're prepared to pay will be largely dependent on how much disposable income they actually have to enable them to be able to pay? And would she ensure that, however these responses are collated at the end, that they are presented in such a context that understands that people's levels of disposable income will have a direct impact on their attitude towards how much they pay and may not actually be considerate of how we as a society pay, bearing in mind lots of people can't afford to pay more.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Deputy. Yes, clearly those issues will be taken into account. The questions have also been informed by the feedback that we have received from the participants in the focus groups. And I think when we actually have more clarity about the way in which the consultation process will unfold, I will be able to address some of those issues for him.
Supplemental, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I'm aware of a previous survey that I believe was conducted by someone else, not her department, which reached a headline conclusion that the public were happy to pay for primary care because that's what the majority of responses they got said. But when you scratched beneath the surface, you saw a direct link between those with more disposable income being happy and those without disposable income to not be able, whether they're happy or not be able to pay for those services. So will she confirm that in conducting this exercise, they have learnt the lessons from previous ones and will not repeat the mistake that's been done previously?
Thank you, sir. If I could just assure the Deputy that in circulating the questions before they are actually distributed, it may well provide an opportunity to address those particular concerns that he has.
Well, final supplementary, Deputy Sutton.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister agree with me that we mustn't lose sight in this process of services being free at the point of delivery, as they are in many places on the island currently?
Thank you, sir. I think all of the issues that participants and people who've been involved in this conversation previously, as well as now, will be taken into account as part of the way in which we will develop our consultation going forward in 2023. It is clear that there are different opportunities, there are different options, there are different perspectives about the future healthcare funding model that we should develop going forward. And as members will know, there is already work underway to actually address the sustainable health funding model for the future. The issues which the Deputy has raised will be considered as part of that.
Very well. We come now to question 5 that Deputy Farnham will ask of the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise how many States members and officials participated in the visit to hospitals in Northern Ireland and the total length of their stay, sir, as referred to in Appendix 2 of the review of the Our Hospital project?
Sir, could I just check that I can be heard?
Yes, we can hear you, Minister.
That's fine, sir. Yes, I was accompanied by 3 officials on the visit to Northern Ireland, which covered 3 nights and 3 working days. The delegation consisted of the acting project director, the associate managing director for Health and Community Services, the medical director for Health and Community Services, and me.
Supplemental question?
Can I thank the Minister and say that is a very appropriate team to do this visit, sir. Does the Minister agree that delivering good health care, sir, is not just about the fabric of a building? It's not just about how a hospital is built. The Appendix 2, sir, of the report, which relates to the visit to Northern Ireland, lists 18 objectives, 18 good objectives for the visit. Some, sir, about the build and the hospital and the layout, sir, but many objectives relate to how the delivery of a health service correlates with the design and build of a hospital, sir. Would the Minister agree that that is important and essential in designing and developing any future healthcare model for Jersey?
Yeah, I'm very happy to agree to both of those statements.
Well, Deputy Meze.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister consider the NHS in Northern Ireland to be in a state which Jersey should seek to emulate? And did the Minister give any consideration to visits to other jurisdictions which have more successful health services?
I think it's fair to say that the review doesn't seek to emulate anybody's particular health service, and that's certainly wasn't the purpose of going to Northern Ireland. The purpose of going to Northern Ireland was to see some relatively new facilities, 4 in total, all of which had been built in the last 10 years, and all of which, perhaps I'm just a layman, but they were certainly superb as far as I could see, and I think they're they quite impressed the remainder of our delegation, who were people far more qualified to make comments on such matters.
Supplemental, Deputy? No. Final supplementary, Deputy Farmer.
No, thank you, sir. I'll save it for the next question, for the next oral question.
Very well, we come to question 6 that Deputy Kovac will ask of the same Minister. Deputy.
Thank you. Will the Minister outline what progress, if any, he has made in fulfilling green lanes and quiet lanes priority to pedestrians, cyclists and horse riders adopted as amended by the Assembly on 15th July 2020?
Yes, sir.
Yes, officers have brought forward legislative proposals to support the Committee de Connétable in their endeavours to progress P79/2020, and officers from the Operations and Transport Directive have met with the subcommittee of the Committee to present and discuss the details. I'm awaiting the conclusion of the Committee's deliberations before acting further.
Supplemental question?
Just from the infrastructure point of view, what progress is in plan for the next 6 months once the response is received?
Well, as I say, it's very difficult for me to make any further plans until I've heard back from the committee, because I'm sure the deputy realises that minor roads and the lanes referred to are under the control of the parishes and not the infrastructure department.
Well, Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. May I ask the Minister, is he aware that the legislation or the proposition itself was to designate any lane, be it parish or government or whatever department runs it? Just ask him if he's aware of that situation. Thank you, sir.
Apologies, but if I could ask the deputy to clarify, I didn't quite understand what the question related to.
Yes, sir. Basically, the designated lane can be any lane on the island, as suggested in the proposition. So it doesn't have to just be a parish lane. It can be under the Minister's remit, if that's the right word, sir. And I just wonder whether the Minister was aware of that, given his answer to the last question. Thank you, sir.
Not specifically, I have to confess, but I would have thought that given the intention for quiet lanes to be quiet lanes, that it would be very unlikely to refer to very many roads under the control of the infrastructure department.
Supplemental question, yes.
Thank you, sir. Yes. So the proposition was about designated lanes. Could I ask the Minister to urge him to perhaps have a look at the proposition again, because it was a very specific thing that it mentioned. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, certainly happy to do that, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Kovac.
No, thank you.
Come to question 7, that Deputy Rob Ward will ask of the Chairman of the Comité de Connétable.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chair advise what progress the Comité has made in implementing the green lanes and quiet lanes priority to pedestrians, cyclists and horse riders P79, following unanimous adoption of the amended proposition in 2020 by the Assembly? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. And I thank the Deputy for his question and actually the patience in not having pushed this further. And I think he must feel he's being referred to the Department of Circumlocution listening to the previous speaker, sir, because we seem to have got nowhere. Notwithstanding that, sir, I can say from the Comité point of view, we are keen to progress this, but it has to be in a practical manner that that is policeable. And one of the problems we have had is in discussion with others is establishing what a watertight definition of essential travel might be, and it's not straightforward. A lot of these lanes we mention may have few properties on, and they're very simple to deal with. Others might have hundreds on, and that's a different story. So I can assure the Deputy, sir, that the Comité are pleased to progress this. I have got a timeline which I'm happy to let him have, but it's probably not appropriate to take the State's time up with it at this point. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that wonderful word in the first answer. It does feel a little bit like that. Thanks, sir. Can I ask the Chair of the Comité whether perhaps they will have discussions with organisations like the Dutch Cycling Academy, who really could give excellent advice on simple ways to designate even a beginning point of a few lanes to really make some difference so that we don't have to invest millions of pounds in infrastructure that, to be quite frank, we already have, sir. So I would ask them, the Chair whether he would take on board that and perhaps take that as one of the things that might be a driver behind these changes. Thank you, sir.
Yes, indeed we would, sir.
Very well. We come then to question 8 that Deputy Feltham will ask of the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy.
Sir, it's Deputy
I beg your
Farnham.
pardon, it's Deputy Farnham. The trouble is I write these things out in manuscript and sometimes I write them rather quickly. I apologise. Deputy Farnham.
Thank you, sir. Following a review of the Our Hospital project stating that a visit to Northern Ireland was exceptionally valuable, sir, is the Minister aware that the Northern Ireland Healthcare Service is in crisis following years of underfunding and policy dysfunction, including the suspension of unplanned surgery in some hospitals? And is it his assessment that Northern Ireland should continue to be used as an exemplar for Jersey's future hospital and healthcare facilities?
Sir, the objective of the visit to Northern Ireland was to view various modern hospital facilities constructed over the past 10 years. It was also to gather information about the relative merits and challenges of delivering different types of healthcare facilities and further insight into options for modern methods of construction. The delivery of the facilities visited had been recently overseen by the Principal Expert Advisor to the Our Hospital Review, who was able to advise on the benefits and challenges. Neither the visit nor the review places any emphasis on the system of care in Northern Ireland. This was about facilities and learning what we can to deliver an appropriate project for Jersey. So.
Supplemental?
I thank the Minister, sir, for a very well-read technical answer provided by an officer. However, sir, can I refer the Minister to his previous answer where he agreed with me that the delivery of healthcare in a region is intrinsically linked and associated to the design and delivery of a hospital, sir. So I'm trying to match that up with his answer to say they were just there to see the fabrics of buildings, sir, which is not in accordance with the objectives in his review. In a recent review, sir, I'm coming to the question very quickly, sir.
Well, no, if you could come to it pretty well straight away.
Enniskillen Hospital was recently ranked 120 out of 121 hospitals in the UK. Can I ask the Minister, sir, why did he choose Northern Ireland over some of the best performing hospitals and healthcare systems in the UK for this review?
Well, firstly, sir, I'm very happy to give the Deputy an unscripted answer. I don't have any problem with that at all. In terms of linking the two, as I said, I agree entirely that a new hospital has to marry up with the healthcare service provided. And I can state the position again. We went to Northern Ireland to look specifically at buildings, and I don't really see that particularly relates to the healthcare services running within them, because the quality of the buildings were excellent. We could have gone elsewhere, but it seemed to make sense to go where the expert advisor had been responsible for delivering projects over a 10-year period.
Very well. We come to question 9. The Deputy Southern will ask for the Minister for Social.
Would I be allowed a final supplementary?
It's not normal. Normally, if there's no other questions intervening between the ask, you've had one supplementary. The question is a final supplementary, but only if there are other questions intervening. Do you have a question intervening?
Yes, I do. So,
well, in which case, just under the wire, Deputy Mezek.
Thanks, sir. Not intentionally coming to Deputy Farnham's rescue here, but if it has that effect. So the previous hospital projects, members, I understand, undertook visits to hospitals, I believe, in parts of England and in France as well. Has he taken account of the work that was done in those previous iterations about different forms of hospital projects as delivered in those jurisdictions, and included the evidence that was gathered from those visits to provide a more holistic approach in this report?
Yes, I think it's fairly safe to say we've got a very skilled team that have been working on various iterations of the hospital for a long period of time, and they have access to all of that information and draw on all of that when they do any work, to be honest with you, not just the review. So all of that will be carried forward in any event.
Supplemental there?
Thank you, sir. And would the Minister like to give his assessment of the differences and the specifics that were uncovered in the most recent exercise in Northern Ireland as compared to those previously done?
No, that's not something that I could do because it's not something I've done. I haven't personally overseen a comparison of those two elements. No.
Very well. Final supplementary, Deputy Farnham.
Thank you, sir. I have here a dossier, sir, of approximately 100 pages of media clippings and other reports dating from December 2022 back as far as 2016 about the crisis in Northern Ireland, sir, in the healthcare service in Northern Ireland. With the Minister, and I leave this in the members' room should members feel the desire to look at it at some time during the sitting, will the Minister, sir, agree to look into the shortcomings of the Northern Irish Health Service and correlate that, sir, to any findings that his trip and the review has come up with, sir, to ensure that he is not taken off the right course, sir, by just looking at the fabric of a building and not how it can deliver services. Thank you.
Minister.
So I'm still struggling to see the connection. We weren't in Northern Ireland to look at the delivery of their actual health services. I'm certainly certainly happy to look at any evidence that the deputy feels is relevant. But as I say, for my part, I really can't make the connection as strongly as Deputy Farnham can, sir.
Very well. We come now to question 9 that Deputy Southern would ask of the Minister for Social Security. Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister inform members what progress, if any, she has made in negotiations with primary care providers to establish sustainable funding for primary care? And if no progress has been made, when does she expect to have done so?
Sir, I thank the Deputy for his question. Regrettably, it's not one I can really answer. The review of sustainable primary care funding is being conducted by the Minister for Health over the course of the next year, and while I'm committed to working with the Minister in terms of developing the primary care strategy and a sustainable funding model, it'd be inappropriate for me to comment on that review just at present.
Supplemental question, Deputy Southern.
Yes, sir. I'm rather disappointed to hear the answer as given. Surely there must be the most together approach to this particular issue, one that relies on both departments to establish sustainable funding for primary care.
Thank you, sir. I disagree. I think the review of funding sits clearly with the Health Minister. She has people. She will be conducting that review. The Minister and I met with the primary care body last week. We hope to continue working with them closely, collaboratively and in partnership to develop our primary care services. There's a huge amount to talk about, and that work is underway, but I cannot comment on the review because I'm not directly involved in it at this stage. But as soon as the review is ready and the Minister has some aspects to talk about, I will be very happy to discuss them with her.
Deputy Messick.
Thank you, sir. If it's not appropriate to provide a clearer answer to Deputy Southern at this point because of the ongoing review, why is it appropriate to continue to take a substantial amount of money out of the health insurance fund for another purpose when that review has not concluded?
So I think that's something that's going to be debated over the course of the coming weeks, sir.
And could, without having to waste a supplementary, would the Minister would aim to answer my question, which was for her position?
I mean, yes, the fact that it may be debated subsequently isn't an answer to the question. Minister, if you could hazard your answer.
Sir, I believe that as amended by the Council of Ministers, all the monies that we propose to remove from the HIF for 2023 are going directly towards primary care services and services that are directly for the benefit of patients. Withdrawing that funding will mean that some of those services will also have to be withdrawn. We have this year, just to add on to what's happening from the Social Security Department, my predecessor and the primary care body announced this year investment of £9 million into primary care. This investment provides direct financial support for the employment of nurses, paramedics, pharmacists and healthcare assistants. This is aimed to allow practices to develop their provision of services and ensure that patients receive the right care at the right time, in the right place and from the right person. For example, islanders can go and see a nurse for routine monitoring rather than a GP, which both preserves GP's time and also will be a more cost-efficient service for the patient. The £9 million includes a wage support scheme, which will help practices with the cost of employing healthcare professionals, such as nurses, paramedics and healthcare assistants. A budget of £1 million is available in 2022 and a further £2 million will be available in 2023. This funding will be phased out in 24 and 25 as new ways of delivering care and funding are rolled out in conjunction between the Health Department and the primary care body.
Are you able to bring your answer to a close? Normally 1 minute 30 seconds.
Apologies. Sorry,
I don't know. I mean, if you have one last sentence, that's fine. But,
I had a little more, but I think that's the flavour of the £9 million investment.
Supplemental question, Deputy Minister.
Thank you, sir. Interesting, but not an answer to my question. I also don't agree that it's true that services wouldn't be able to be provided if money didn't come from the HIF for it. That can be provided by another means we choose to. We can choose to budget these things how we like. Would the Minister indicate whether she believes the negotiations which Deputy Southern refers to in his question will be easier or more difficult to conduct if money has been taken out of the HIF for another purpose?
Sir, I believe that what matters to GPs is that they are paid for the provision of their services. I don't think the GPs themselves would be particularly concerned whether the money comes from the HIF or the General Reserve, but we must accept that there are a number of other pressures that we need funding from the General Reserve to meet. And having discussed with the Health Minister, I do believe that if the money does not come from the HIF, then services will have to be withdrawn.
Final supplementary, Deputy Southern.
I find it rather shocking to find that a Minister of Social Security denies having total responsibility for the funding of primary care, because she does, surely. Does she not agree?
I'm surprised by the Deputy shock because I don't believe I denied any responsibility for funding. The responsibility clearly sits with me at the moment. What I do find odd is that the Minister for Social Security has any responsibility for provision of primary care, which very clearly, in my opinion, sits with the Minister for Health. That is an entirely sensible way forward. That is what I'll be working with the Minister for Health over next year and the year after to ensure we have both an adequate primary care strategy, which meets the needs of the patients, the practices, and that our funding available. And we will be working very closely with the Health Minister to achieve that. Thank you.
Well, we come to question 10. The Deputy Andrews will ask of the Chair of the States Employment Board. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chair explain what premiums, if any, are paid to staff in health and community services who are filling vacancies on a short-term basis during 2022?
Sir, if the Deputy is content, the Vice Chair, the Constable of St John, would like to answer the question.
Yes, if the Deputy doesn't mind. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Sir, HCS has two approaches to filling vacancies on a short-term basis, both of these being used during 2022. They either use external interim or locum workers, or offers acting up opportunities to existing staff within the organisation. For interim roles, no specific premiums are paid to individuals other than the agreed day rate, which is higher than that of the permanent rate to offset lack of paid annual leave. The acting up roles are offered the difference between their substantive role and the role that they are filling at the time. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Andrews?
Yes, sir. Would there be any quantitative data that could be made available to me in private about this, sir?
We can try and find that, sir. I can tell the Deputy, for example, that HCS had spent £8 million on 0 hours bank staff up until the end of October, but I'm happy to share details with him if he asks specific questions.
Deputy Sutton.
Yes, I think I may have heard the answer in his previous answer, but what information is shared with Health and Social Services over the use of bank or bank nurses?
I'm not quite sure, Deputy. The information that we get at SEB comes from HCS in terms of what they've actually used. So it's HCS that tell us how many hours they've used. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Sutton? Final question, supplementary question, Deputy Andrews. Very well, that brings questions with notice to an end. We now move to questions without notice. Unfortunately, the Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture is unwell, and therefore the 45 minutes of questions will be allocated 15 minutes as to the Minister for the Environment, and I'm afraid the remaining 30 minutes, I say I'm afraid from the Chief Minister's point of view, to the Chief Minister. So the first question period is for the Minister for the Environment. Does anyone have any questions for the Minister for the Environment? Deputy Farnham.
Thank you, sir. Recently, the Minister shared his intentions with members to limit the size of private dwellings. Does he intend, albeit though, sir, I believe he has the power to do this by order perhaps, does he intend to come to the Assembly with a proposition on this? Thank you.
Minister.
So I presume the Deputy is referring to the recent consultation we held on several items of supplementary planning guidance. And it is under the terms of the planning law that I will bring further supplementary planning guidance on this matter. The aim of that consultation was to discuss how we might restrict the development of very large buildings where there may be the potential to develop a number of smaller units which would be of use to families to the island. And it will be my intention to, following assessment of the consultation exercise, to bring that supplementary planning guidance into action.
Just to be clear, sir, does he intend to? Because I think this is quite an important issue when we start encroaching onto what citizens can and can't do with their own properties, and limit the sizes of houses. And I'm not saying that I agree or disagree, but I think it's probably it's probably an area important enough to be worthy of debate by this Assembly, sir. Could you just clarify whether he's going to bring it to the Assembly or not, sir? Thank you.
No, sir, I do not intend to bring it to the Assembly. I think that it's worth pointing out that this was an item mentioned in the 100-day action plan of the government. There has been plenty of opportunity for members and indeed the public to respond to that intent. And indeed there has been response to that. It's also the case that there are within that guidance, even in the published guidance on which we consulted, there was considerable care in the phrasing of it to allow for exceptional circumstances. It is not a blanket ban and is not intended to be a blanket ban. It is intended to set a direction of travel and to place further policy guidance in front of planning officers and the planning committee when they come to make decisions. So I do not believe it is necessary to bring it to the Assembly as a separate proposition.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister believe that planning permission for applications should only be granted if they contain sufficient information required by the relevant policies of the Bridging Island Plan to allow an informed, fair, transparent and consistent determination?
So I think it would be very hard for a Minister for the Environment to argue against that sort of that outline. Or put another way, let's not have full and frank disclosure and disclosure of information. I think that would be a totally untenable proposition. So in principle, of course, I support what the Deputy has to say. I'm suspecting there may be a supplemental coming which will try and extract some more information from me. I don't know.
Supplementary. Given this, then, will the Minister ask the Department to ensure that applications seeking to convert commercial sites to residential for which a redundancy test applies include sufficient evidence of marketing in line with existing policies and the supplementary planning guidance?
So I think the Deputy has made a good point in that we need to ensure that where there is policy guidance on information that needs to be provided in order for officers to make a determination and in order for the public to see that fairness has been clearly evidenced, that sort of information should be forthcoming for decision makers and indeed in the public forum. And I'm happy to commit to remind officers of that need as soon as this sitting is over. Thank you.
Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. Following up on Deputy Farnham's question, does the Minister accept that most of the proposals in the 100-day plan were indeed debated by the Assembly and that government website actually suggests that if there's going to be a consultation, that should generally be a significant consultation should be 8 weeks, whereas the one that was brought into place for the expensive houses and density was limited to 6 weeks. And that contrasts with the 12 weeks that is actually provided generally for consultation, along with the opportunity for the States Assembly to debate changes to planning policy that's currently provided under law, so that this decision to bring in policies without the States Assembly's approval may be regarded as undemocratic.
So, no, I would take issue with some of the Deputy's comments. The 8-week requirement sits around the island plan itself, the 8-week consultation period. This is supplementary planning guidance, and supplementary planning guidance can only work in the same direction of travel as existing policies. In other words, it cannot invent new policy directions. It has to be supplementary to existing policy directions. So in that sense, a 6-week period feels appropriate. It may interest the Deputy to know that we received several, I think 2 actually, but there may have been more comments from people who said they couldn't meet the deadline, and we told them that we would accept comments when they were able to within the next 2 weeks, I think. So I believe that anybody who's wanted to have a consultation on this issue has had a very good chance to do so. Thank you.
Supplemental, Deputy Scott.
Yes, please. Does the Minister accept that this is not normal supplementary planning guidance, which generally is guidance, rather than an actual, rather than policies with numbers which amend the island plan, which actually bring in further content into the island plan, and therefore should be distinguished from supplementary planning guidance, and that it is appropriate for the States Assembly, given their import, to approve their content.
Minister.
So no, as I've said already and explained in my earlier answer, for the reasons I gave earlier, I do not accept that. I think this works clearly in the direction of the existing island plan, and I'm content with the answer I gave earlier on that.
So may I ask for some guidance from the Chair on a matter of a process, sir, and that is if a member does not agree with the Minister and wishes to call for a debate, rather than just lodging a proposition, what are the options? I'm not sure if that question could be answered quickly, sir, but I thought I'd raise it.
Well, I'm not sure I fully understand the question, Deputy. The question is, what are the circumstances in which a member can procure a debate on a particular issue before the Assembly?
Well, as I understand it, sir, the Minister is going to use his powers under the relevant law to make a decision that I think is quite far-reaching and affects many and could affect many islanders, sir. And I think that is a decision that is perhaps worthy of debate and ultimate approval by this Assembly. I'm wondering what, other than lodge a proposition, so I'm trying to work out the timing from when the minister's desire might become embedded in law, sir, as a decision. And is there a way a member can either call that in or intervene with the process to force a debate other than lodging a proposition?
Well, thank you for the question, Deputy Farnham. Obviously, I don't want to interrupt question time as we go along at the moment, but I will give that some thought. Deputy Rob Ward.
Thank you, sir. So it was last week or the week before that the US House of Representatives Committee found that some of the world's largest oil and gas companies have internally dismissed the need to swiftly move to renewable energy and cut planet heating emissions, despite publicly portraying themselves as concerned about the climate crisis. May I ask the Minister, does he feel that continued investment in these companies supports this contradictory approach by these large companies?
So this seems a good debating point. I'm not sure it has a huge amount of relevance since I do not control any funds that would be invested in any of these companies. I would say this, that as I tried to explain in the previous debate that we had on this matter, that the question of how a transition is going to be funded away from fossil fuels is a complicated one in practice. And we know that the fossil fuel companies have extraordinary financial resources and extraordinary technical abilities. And we would, I'm sure, all like those resources to be deployed in the services of a clean energy transition. I find it hard to know what policies we could pursue in Jersey that would enable the encouragement of investment into a particular part of the investment portfolio of a fossil fuel company when they are investing in green technologies, as opposed to the bits when they're not.
Supplementary question, Deputy?
Yes, thank you, sir. Further on, the chair of the House Oversight Committee said that documents obtained from companies including Exxon, Shell, BP and Chevron show that the fossil fuel industry has no real plans to clean up its act and is barrelling ahead with plans to pump more dirty fuels for decades to come. Indeed, the committee said, the committee accused the oil firms of a long-running greenwashing campaign. So, may I ask the Minister, is it not the fact that by not showing the willingness to say that we should not be investing and actually showing the approach that we can invest in one area to get another, we are being shown again and again from studies that is not the case, and should we not be thinking again about that attitude? Thank you, sir.
So I presume I'm being asked for a personal opinion here. So I presume I'm being asked for a personal opinion here. I would prefer not to see any further investment in major fossil fuel infrastructure. As I pointed out in the debate, it is very difficult to draw those lines. We may need to invest in fossil fuel infrastructure in Jersey in order to smooth the transition. We still are dependent on aspects of fossil fuel infrastructure. Does that count as a fossil fuel investment? It's very hard to draw those lines. I agree with those who say that investment in major scale exploration of new fossil fuel resources is incompatible with our intention to get a swift transition. But the matter of how you deliver that, and in particular how I would play a role in delivering that, I find much harder to discern.
Well, does anyone have any further questions for the Minister? Conrad Harbison-Brillard.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has a considerable, I'd say, mileage of country footpaths to administer. Would he tell members whether he has sufficient resource within his department to be able to manage those footpaths, given we're trying to get people to use them more, not only with their legs, but also with their bicycles? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
So I thank the Conotab for the question. And it's particularly opportune that I'm answering that question on the same time as we're going to be talking about the government plan, because I'm very pleased that during the discussions around the government plan, I was able to secure some additional funding for the natural environment team. And that should enable us to continue funding people who had previously been funded under the Climate Emergency Fund to continue working in the natural environment team on precisely those kind of activities. They will also be able to be employed in other countryside management activities. So from the top of my head, I cannot remember the figures that this involves, but I am pleased that we were able to secure those additional resources. They're not huge in the great scheme of things by government plan standards, but they nevertheless make a big difference. A little money goes a long way in terms of countryside management. And it's also worth saying that a lot of that work involves working with volunteer groups in the parishes and other social and environmental groups who want guidance in order to see how they can help with that kind of countryside management and path management. And I think that work will be able to continue.
Supplemental question, Senator?
No, sir. I thank the Minister for his answer.
Deputy Scott.
So it's a question to you. It's clear that Deputy Farnham and I would like to bring a proposition to have...
I'm sorry, Deputy, if this
sorry,
is...
this question is under Article 18 of the Standing Orders and 26.6. I'm asking whether it is possible for Deputy Farnham and I to bring a proposition that the States Assembly should debate, should actually have a proposition.
Well, Deputy Scott, as I've already indicated, I will answer that question, but I don't propose to do it during the course of question time.
Thank you, sir.
Because at the end of the day, this question time has a time limit required
Thank
on
you,
it.
sir.
Very much. Yes, Deputy Andrews, probably time for one more question.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister believe that companies in Jersey should be reporting on green finance investments as an overall percentage of investments for their companies? Thank you, sir.
Sir, I would be interested in further clarification on what he means by companies in Jersey. Does he mean the full range of companies, including finance companies, for example, operating in Jersey? Okay, I take that nod to mean yes. So I think this is work that is ongoing with, which involves consultations between Deputy Jeune and the Minister for External Relations in terms of the way in which it applies to finance, which I think is where the biggest impact that we could have in this area would occur. And I think those are discussions which are ongoing. I've delegated responsibilities for those areas to Deputy Jeune, and I'm willing to get back to him and give him a more full answer, either as a written or oral question answer in the future, but I don't have any more information than that at the moment.
Very well. That actually brings the time available for questions to this Minister to an end. The remaining time within this period is for questions that can be directed to the Chief Minister. Does anyone have any questions for the Chief Minister? Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. The Chief Minister's Environment Minister has stated his intention to bring back regulations to implement a licensing scheme similar to iterations that have been before this Assembly previously. Could the Chief Minister confirm whether she has the unanimous support of the Council of Ministers in the Council of Ministers bringing that proposition?
Thank you, Deputy, and certainly the Environment Minister has my support and has the support of the majority of the Council of Ministers. I am afraid that at this point I can't recall exactly what the makeup was, but I certainly the overwhelming support across the Council of Ministers for the Deputy and the Minister in bringing forward this proposition.
Supplemental question? Does anyone else have questions for the Chief Minister? Thompson.
Thank you, sir. In the absence of my being able to ask the question of the Economic Affairs Minister, can the Chief Minister elaborate or clarify why, or the circumstances whereby this morning's incoming flight from Heathrow was unable to discharge its passengers for a full half hour on account of the fact that the steps were not available, due apparently to some breakdown of communication between BA and the company providing that service.
I thank the Constable for his question. Whilst I have no knowledge of the specific circumstances that the Deputy has outlined, I am aware that there were some significant delays last night in flights leaving the island, and my understanding is that this may be due to some changes or operational changes at the airport that have taken place very recently. That, of course, is a matter for ports, and I'm sure that the Minister will be cited on these. And if not, I will request him to take up this matter of maintaining the high standards of service levels that islanders rightly expect as the airport progresses into the future.
Supplemental question, Conisel? Deputy Scott.
Sir, I just would like to ask the Chief Minister if she is supportive of the Minister for Environment bringing in interim policies H2A and H9A without the consent or prior approval of the States Assembly.
So I do believe that the writing of supplementary planning guidance is simply that, and the Minister for the Environment has my full confidence in his approach to dispatching his duties.
Supplemental question, Deputy Scott?
No, thank you, sir.
Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Is the Chief Minister of the belief that there needs to be structural reorganisation of the civil service and public sector workforce?
So the civil service has for the past 5 years experienced a period of considerable uncertainty due to structural changes that have been driven. So our government is very aware of that and does not wish to cause any further stress to our workforce. However, we do wish to ensure that we deliver value for money, and that is where our focus will be moving forward. We want to ensure that we have a skilled workforce. We particularly have a relentless focus upon recruitment and retention, and that's particularly within our critical key workers, meaning health workers and particularly education, where we have what seems to be a recruitment crisis. And we are much focused on solving the issues causing those recruitment issues and also delivering value for money for Ireland.
Supplemental question. Deputy Meze.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister regard the Cabinet Office which she has created to be aligned with that was outlined in the vision proposed by the PPC subcommittee in the last term when they concluded that the functioning of government would benefit from having a Cabinet Office?
In all honesty, sir, I can understand why the Deputy might be asking this question. I can only say partially, and the Deputy and I have discussed this both in public and in private also. The world isn't perfect, and I think that what we are delivering is a major step forward, but there may be some aspects that might consider some further work in the future, sir. But at the moment, with what we have, I think we're making a positive step and progress.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Thanks, sir. I thank the Chief Minister for what was a very fair and accurate answer, I think. Could she therefore explain to us, when she referenced the future at the end of her answer, how soon that future may be, that we can expect improvements in the design of the Cabinet Office so that it can actually function as it's intended to deliver on government political priorities?
Well, we are still working on that delivery, and I can't commit exactly to a time frame at this moment, but I'm mindful of the Deputy's comments, and I look forward to discussing that with him in the future and benefiting from his wisdom and the work of the former subcommittee.
Well, are there any other questions for the Chief Minister? Scott.
Thank you, sir. Coming back to the Lifestyle and Opinions survey, which included a report on the trust in Jersey institutions. There were 2 institutions in which trust had actually reduced that I noticed, which was Statistics Jersey and the police. I wondered whether the Chief Minister had any thoughts on what might be the reason for that and whether that will be looked into.
In the main, that particular section of the Jersey Opinion and Lifestyle Survey was quite positive, and it was good to see. The Deputy is quite right in highlighting, of course, there are always areas where we need to work further, and it's a particular sadness that the States of Jersey Police and Statistics Jersey may have been viewed in that respect back in June and July of last year. I am sure that all people working for those areas of government, which are important areas and areas where their independence is particularly important, will continue to build the confidence and work with the public of the island so that that measure can be seen in a different light next year.
Supplemental, Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. In the case of Statistics Jersey, does the Chief Minister consider that the reduction in trust, given that Statistics Jersey scored pretty highly in the past, may have anything to do with a perceived compromise of the independence of the Chief Statistician after the merger of his role with the Director of Analytics for SPPP Government Department?
The Deputy has, of course, much greater knowledge in this specific area than I do, but my only understanding of Statistics Jersey is it has the utmost independence and it is allowed to operate with that independence, and all members of the government and indeed the public service respect that.
Deputy Meze.
Thank you, sir. With regards to the tragic incidents which occurred on Thursday morning out at sea, is the Chief Minister able to confirm at this point which body she believes will be responsible for carrying out any sort of investigation into it?
An investigation has begun with the relevant marine authorities.
Supplemental to that, sir. Does any other member have any questions for the Chief Minister? Honourable Brillard.
So would the Chief Minister agree that the Marine Accident Investigation Board is the correct body to undergo that investigation?
I thank the Constable for his assistance, sir.
And yes, was the answer yes, sir?
I would agree.
Presumably no supplemental question there.
No, sir.
Deputy Luce.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask the Chief Minister if she thinks islanders are paying too much money to visit the doctor?
Sir, we have recently identified, and in the government plan, in fact, that there is work to be done, particularly for certain sections of the community, to ensure that there is greater ease and financial support for members of our community, particularly for children, and so that they can receive primary care.
Supplemental?
Can I take that as a yes then, sir?
Yes, sir.
Deputy Meze.
Thank you, sir. Could the Chief Minister outline what form of consultation takes place with the representatives within the municipal government in the parish of St Helier when the government decides to announce policies which will clearly have a big impact on St Helier, such as changes in plans to a hospital proposal or where a school may or may not be built?
Well, sir, we have recently set up the Future Paces ministerial group, of which the Constable of St Helier is a member. This group is mostly focused on taking a strategic approach in terms of land use, and I think that is the appropriate forum with which we should discuss such matters internally, and therefore the Constable of St Helier, as the leader of that parish, is a part of the group.
Supplemental question?
Yes, thank you, sir. And therefore, can we take it as a given then that before the Council of Ministers goes ahead and lodges proposals like that, which is an amendment to the government plan on school site in St Helier, or other amendments and propositions that get brought to the Assembly on, for example, places where the hospital may be located, that the Constable of St Helier, as the representative of the municipal government in the parish of St Helier, is directly consulted?
If we could focus particularly on the siting of the school, I do recall that that was a decision of the previous Assembly who supported an amendment brought by Deputy Rob Ward to locate that school on Gas Place. The Constable has been consulted with regards to the views of the Future Places panel and their desire to deliver a school to meet the urgent needs that our education facilities have. We certainly want to deliver a better environment within which our young can learn and enjoy their formative years, and also deliver community facilities at the heart of our town-dwelling public and population. The Constable was fully cited on this decision, and as part of those discussions, he is also aware of our desire to increase green spaces and to compensate for that by proposing to turn the current site of Springfield School into a park in the future, and also to look at other sites such as the current Labar Centre to create additional green space in and around town, and also to link all of those with green pathways around town and through to St Saviour.
Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. I can do this all day. So to correct the Chief Minister, whose understanding of the state's decision in the Bridging Island Plan was inaccurate, the states determined that the gasworks site could be available for use for a new school if no other appropriate sites were made available. It didn't decide in principle that this would be definitely to go ahead. So can we therefore gather from the fact that the Constable of St Helier has lodged an amendment to that amendment to the government plan stating that nothing should happen until a master plan for that area is in place, as a sign that whatever consultation process she does use to engage with the Constable of St Helier, that it evidently isn't good enough?
Thank you for reminding me of the finer elements of that debate. If that was the case, then I stand by the Deputy's memory. However, it is our view that the Gas Place site is the most appropriate site. And if I could draw the Deputy's attention to the Northern Quarter, which I believe he or some of his party members have suggested might be preferable in their view as a site for education. It's simply not the case, because part of that site, the Northern Quarter, has already been purchased by Andium and plans are underway to begin its development. The other part of the site is in private hands. We want to actually focus on delivery, so it's critical that we do deliver better education premises for our young, and particularly within the town setting. And so, sir, that is why we are committed to this progress alongside the creation of additional green space around town.
Supplemental there?
Thank you, sir. The argument that Chief Minister's used about the Northern Quarter site could surely just as easily be used about the old hotel sites on Kensington Place. The argument is exactly the same there. But the Chief Minister didn't really answer my previous question, which was that given that there is an amendment that has been posed by the Constable of St Helier to the government plan saying that this shouldn't go ahead until a master plan for the area is in place, does the Chief Minister regard that as a sign that her consultation process with the Constable of the capital of this island and the most densely populated part of this island is not adequate?
Clearly, there's a difference of opinion, sir, but it is our view at the Future Places panel that this is the way forward. We've spent as an assembly, this one, well, not so much this one because we're so new, but the previous one has spent a lot of time looking at various iterations of ideas and not delivering. So this assembly wishes to deliver, and certainly this government wishes to deliver and to improve the lives, particularly of town dwellers. We feel it's particularly important, sir, to deliver green spaces within and around town rather than on the outskirts of the parish that are a considerable walk away, probably a drive to the border with Trinity.
Deputy Basic.
Thank you, sir. So could the Chief Minister confirm for us the membership of that Future Places body, how many of the members who sit on it are directly electorally accountable to people who live in St Helier, and would she further comment on if that body is reaching conclusions which are at odds with the democratically elected representatives of St Helier, whether residents of St Helier can have faith in it as a representative body to make decisions that are in line with what we actually want?
Thank you. So I think there are at least 3 representatives of St Helier, the Minister for Education, the Minister for Housing, as well as the Constable of St Helier. And so I do feel that the residents of St Helier are well catered for, and they are most certainly at the forefront of our thoughts when taking such decisions that relate to the built environment within which they live. And we could particularly point to former Jersey opinion and lifestyle surveys that have indicated issues about residents of St Helier and their feelings towards the environment within which they live. And that is where our desire comes from, to deliver not only better education facilities for their children, but also a nicer environment from within which they can live.
Supplemental question?
Thank you, sir. Could the Chief Minister didn't indicate who else sits on that panel and whether those representatives of St Helier make up a majority on it, but what is clear from the members she did list is that 2/3 of them were elected on the basis of wanting to see an extension of the Millennium Park onto the gasworks site. So how can the Chief Minister expect residents in St Helier who live in that area to have confidence that when they go out to vote that their voices will be heard? Because it sounds like at this point they're not.
I think, sir, and I'm not going to start listing the membership of every panel. I think it might stretch my memory at this point of the day, I'm afraid to admit. But what we have focused on is that this will be a community facility that will offer green space outside of school hours to local residents. It will also offer an active travel route around the site, and we are very focused on doing that because with the greatest intentions, even if the Millennium Park were extended, and we understand the desire to do that, but it will still not be a size and scale equivalent to large parks that we may see in great cities around the world. And so we have approached this in a sort of best endeavours way and also focused it on being able to offer access and active travel routes so that people might run and walk and cycle in and around that green space to other green spaces and on to St Saviour, where there's a particular large population, and beyond into the wider countryside of the island. And I think that that will be a good thing for the residents of St Helier to enjoy.
Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Does the Chief Minister believe that government redistribution needs to be alleviated? So in relation to transfer payments that are made to islanders?
I'm sorry, sir, but I'm not quite sure what transfer payments the Deputy is referring to.
Welfare payments.
Could you say that again?
So essentially, sir, what I'm asking for is for the Chief Minister to provide her opinion on government redistribution. So in essence, we're speaking about welfare payments that are made to islanders, so households. Does she believe there needs to be a mechanism in place to try and alleviate the extent of government redistribution?
I'm not entirely sure what the deputy is driving at, and forgive me if I'm being obtuse, but sir, what I would like to say is that, of course, this Assembly supported our approach in the mini-budget, and that approach did distribute money to islanders in different household groups in order to put more money in their pockets at this difficult time. We did that through the income support system, we did that through the community bonus, which is extended to those who don't have a sufficient income to pay income tax, and also thank you to an amendment from Deputy Feltham to extend that group which pays a small amount of income tax. We've also recently agreed to increase the value of benefits and housing components to meet the rising cost of living, sir. And so I think we are approaching all of those pieces of work along with increasing the minimum wage to show our commitment to ensuring that everybody has the best opportunities and to improve their quality of life, sir.
Supplemental question. Deputy Farnham.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister explain that since the formation of the new government, how the morale is in the civil service, sir, and whether she is satisfied and working well with the new Chief Executive and her team? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, we, I think, have a very strong civil service who are totally motivated by doing the right thing and serving their community, and I've been really impressed by their approach. We know that there still exists pockets, particularly in healthcare, where culture and morale is an issue, and it's one that we wish to address, and we're doing so by delivering, ensuring that we improve recruitment and retention, and also housing opportunities for people who work in those critical services. And I'm very grateful to the Chief Executive for her unstinting hard work through every single week that we have worked together.
Supplemental question. Deputy Rob Ward.
Thank you, sir. So last week on Friday, I was pleased to attend with a few members from across this Assembly, training offered called Cultural Humility Training, and I found it both challenging, interesting, informative, and it certainly made me look at the way I address the world. Unfortunately, sir, only 15 members of the Assembly attended this opportunity. Can I ask the Chief Minister whether she would commit to making this training available again into the future, and to really encourage members to attend, particularly from ministers and assistant ministers from across government who didn't attend, and members from across this Assembly, as it's a great way of opening our minds to the diversity that we have on this island. Thank you, sir.
I thank the Deputy for the question, because I had heard about this training programme and I was quite disappointed I hadn't been able to find space in my diary to attend. I would really encourage members to attend future sessions, and the one deputy to my left has just informed me that unfortunately one session was cancelled, but I believe another date is being provided by PPC because this was an initiative that was brought forward by that committee.
Supplementary. So I believe that 2 sessions were cancelled because there weren't members. So would the Chief Minister agree that these types of things really have to be encouraged, and diary time needs to be made for members so that they can actually address issues which perhaps they're not aware of? I certainly wasn't aware of some of the things that I encountered, sir. Thank you.
I would entirely agree with the Deputy. It's always good to open our minds and to think about what other people think about the world, and to try and put ourselves in their shoes, which I think is the description that the Deputy was giving. Thank you.
Does any other member have a question for the Chief Minister? No other member has a question? And question time is over for the Chief Minister. And question time in general is now concluded. I have been asked to give a ruling about the ability of members to, other than bringing a separate proposition, call matters in or something of that nature. It seems to me that this is not something that I need to rule upon for the purposes of the business of the Assembly during the course of this sitting, and I propose, therefore, that that kind of confirmation should be provided directly through the GREF in the normal way that members consult in terms of what their procedural options are. And if it's necessary for me to make a ruling at that point, then I will. Very well.
Sir, could I ask for a ruling on another matter, please? Given that this wasn't a previously scheduled Assembly date, I personally have had some issues with childcare, partly because my child's other parent is part of the efforts at the Pier Road incident, and I'm wondering if the hybrid sitting that, of course, is available to those who have COVID, could that be available to those who have issues with childcare this afternoon, please? It would enable me to still use my vote, and I wouldn't be disenfranchised because of caring responsibilities.
I've confirmed with the Deputy Greffier that my memory is correct. I think the way that the standing orders have been changed, whether that's desirable or not, permits individuals, for whatever compelling reason, to deal with the matter remotely if they're within the island. And so there's no reason why that cannot, I think, be done in your case, Deputy. So the answer is, I think, yes, that is a possibility.
Thank you, sir.
Very well. We've now reached the end of questions, and the Assembly had previously decided that at the end of questions we would adjourn and start again on public business tomorrow morning. Whether that's still the will of the Assembly, I will test in a moment, but it may be sensible, as there is one preliminary matter to deal with, which is the decision as to whether to reduce the minimum lodging period for the Minister for Social Security.
Sir, I think that request should have been withdrawn.
It's been withdrawn, has it?
I believe so, sir. Is that for the Social Security regulations? I think the Social Security Amendment of Law 17 and the Draft Health
Yes.
Insurance Fund, those were both pushed into January, so I'm not
Well, in which
proposing...
case you don't need the Assembly's agreement to take them.
No, sir.
Very well. Well, in which case it's a matter for the Assembly whether we adjourn now or whether we begin to deal with Deputy Farnham's proposition.
So may I propose that we continue with the sitting, please?
That's
Yes,
proposition. Is that seconded?
So,
I'm going to assume, because no one is standing wishing to speak, does anyone wish to speak on that?
no, so it was a separate thing I wanted to get in before that, actually. I was going to, but I may have missed, but it was a question, when the deadline was for comments on the government plan, just to be sure when that deadline was, because I'm unsure about a couple of things. Thanks.
I would have to ask, I'm afraid, that the Greffier have not been monitoring the deadline.
So I can help. I think it was 12 o'clock on Thursday, midday on Thursday, but I'm getting a nod, so I assume it is the case. Thank you, sir.
Unless the Greffier is going to shake his head at me and nod to you. Yes, it was 12 o'clock on Thursday. Thank you. Thank you, Greffier. Very well. Do members agree that we should stay until the usual conclusion time at 5:30? Very well. I'm going to assume that we've taken that on a standing vote, and that is what we're going to do. Very well.
So may I raise an issue then? I don't know how, regards what we're coming. So I want to raise a huge concern that I've had, that there were therefore 8 comments papers that were submitted late for this debate on the government plan. I myself have been, well, every single thing I've submitted recently, it seems, has had a late comment paper or a late amendment to it. And so if we're going to continue, then we may as well, I think we need to start to look at rearranging standing orders, sir. And I'm a real concern for the processes in this Assembly if so many times we're going to miss deadlines. And now, if it was this week, I would totally understand with what was going on. But it was before those incidents happened. So I'm not conflating with those things. But I just want to make that point. So it's very difficult if we're reaching deadlines and government is simply not doing it on so many comments papers and amendments to amendments and so on. Thank you, sir.
Well, are you asking me to make some form of ruling about that?
Well, so I just wonder whether those comments papers should be accepted, because the good reason seems to have been, well, we were busy, but we're all busy, sir. Thank you, sir.
At the end of the day, it must be a matter for the Assembly whether that's a possibility or not. If the Assembly wish to reject a document on the grounds that it's not fallen within a deadline, then so be it. But,
Sir.
yes, the greffier has reminded me, and I'm sorry, I recall, standing orders require of something filed late merely an explanation, if it's a comment, that as to why it's been filed late. If the explanation exists, then it's in accordance with standing orders.
Sir, I would like to offer my apologies if there were comments submitted late on behalf of the government. We did have a significant number of amendments and comments to publish, and I absolutely accept the Deputy's comment that we're all busy. But of course, we were also somewhat concerned on Thursday morning with the sad events in relation to the tragedy at sea and the sinking of the Lacoon 2.
Very well. We now move on then to public business. The first item, as the Assembly has resolved, is the Our Hospital project reporting, P109, lodged by Deputy Farnham. And for the purposes of this debate, the main respondent will be the Chief Minister. Deputy, you indicated that you would like to accept the amendment of the Connétable St Helier, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And therefore you would like, if the Assembly agrees, for your proposition to be read as amended by his amendment.
Indeed, I would, sir. Thank you.
Do you have any objection to that, Connétable?
Yes, sir, that's great. Thank you.
Do members agree that the proposition should be read as amended by the amendment of the Connétable St Helier? Very well. In which case, I ask the greffier to read the proposition as amended.
The States are asked to decide whether they are of opinion, in order to achieve the best possible clinical and financial outcomes from the delivery of a new hospital, to request the Council of Ministers to present a report to the States no later than the 20th of March 2023, in which a comparison is made between the multi-site option indicated in the report, a review of the Our Hospital project, R154 in 2022, and the Overdale project, as previously approved with the adoption of the following propositions. Our Hospital site selection, Overdale, P123 of 2020. Our Hospital acquisition of land for the new hospital at Overdale, P129 of 2020. Our Hospital preferred access route, P167 of 2020. And Our Hospital budget financing and land assembly, P80 of 2021. Both with and without the costs involved in the previously agreed remodelling of Westmount Road, St Albans Road, Pearson Road, Victoria Park and the Inn on the Park car park and the associated land purchases and the demolition of the Jersey Bowling Club and its reprovisioning, with the report specifically to include A, a direct like-for-like financial analysis of the multi-site option and the approved Overdale project to include both capital and running costs, B, a direct like-for-like clinical and medical analysis of the multi-site option and the approved Overdale project, and C, additional options for funding the approved Overdale project, and that no decision should be sought of the States Assembly that would deviate from the decisions previously taken on the hospital project until the report has been presented.
Prior to the reading of the proposition, I think you indicated that it was your view that the Chief Minister would be the direct respondent. I think It was my understanding that the responsibility for delivering a hospital rests with the Infrastructure Minister, and therefore I would have expected you to suggest that he was the direct respondent.
Well, I don't think if the Chief Minister believes that the Infrastructure Minister is the correct responder, I don't think there's any difficulty with that, because it's not that it obviously rests with one particular minister. But I do observe that the Infrastructure Minister is not present in the Assembly and will be dealing with any response over the...
I can confirm that the Treasury Minister is correct. The Minister for Infrastructure is the main responder and stands ready to do so, sir.
Well, in which case, I'm happy to note that the... Sorry, did you have something to add to that?
A separate matter, sir.
A separate matter. I'm very content that the Infrastructure Minister will be the main responder in the matter. Do you have a point to raise before the proposition is...
Yes, please. So just to declare that I'm the president of the Jersey Bowls Club, which is affected by the proposition.
Could I also take this opportunity to put a declaration of interest on record that I have a sibling who lives in the area around Oakham?
Very well. Thank you very much indeed. Neither of those are direct financial interests and don't require withdrawal. The referee has read the proposition. Deputy Fon.
Thank you, sir. And can I start by thanking the Assembly for giving it permission to debate this important proposition as first item. Can I also thank the Constable of St Helier for his amendment, which I am pleased to accept, and also thank the Assembly for allowing that too, sir. The Constable's amendment simply seeks to ensure we understand the difference in costs and logistics of providing the new road against not providing the new road. And I can say, sir, in this Assembly that nothing would give me greater pleasure if we were to achieve the Overdale solution without having to build a new road. And I think the Constable's amendment, if successful, if this proposition is successful, sir, will help us to understand more about that. The sole aim of this proposition is to ensure that the government does not abandon the approved Overdale project without first seeking the States Assembly's approval, and until such time as there is certainty that the multi-site scheme proposed by the Chief Minister and the Minister for Infrastructure is a better option for Jersey, both clinically and financially. I also want to say, sir, that this is not a wrecking or a delaying proposition, as some commentators have suggested. Indeed, sir, how can it be when the alternative solution itself includes a much later completion date? It is a scheme, sir, that will not be completed until 2032, whereas the current plans would produce a fully operational hospital, originally by the end of 2026, sir, but now, because of these delays, by early 2027, if we are of a mind to get on with it. Essentially, this proposition simply asks that the Chief Minister and the Council of Ministers, for them to be open and transparent, sir, something they have publicly committed to on numerous occasions. A review of our hospital project was presented to the States Assembly by the Minister for Infrastructure at the beginning of last month. The review concluded that the Overdale project should be abandoned and replaced by a phased multi-site development. This report, sir, I contend is disappointing, not least because in the context of the large amount of expert clinical advice and detailed financial information compiled for the existing project. And this has been largely ignored, I'm sorry to say, or discounted in the latest report, sir. That level of detail was quite rightly demanded by the previous Assembly and provided in a number of reports and propositions, which were all dealt with quite properly and in line with the democratic procedures of this, our States Assembly, and especially, sir, by the Chief Minister, in her then role as chair of the Hospital Scrutiny Panel, who demanded and were provided with considerable detailed information on all aspects of the Overdale project. And she was a hard taskmaster, sir, as was the panel when it came to detail. Yet, sir, neither she nor the Council of Ministers appear to want to provide that same level of information prior to cancelling what probably is the most important project that this Assembly, sir, indeed past Assemblies and future Assemblies will ever have to deal with. It is a new hospital, sir, a long overdue hospital, and probably the most important building on the island. I am asking for more information today, sir, because the report is light on detail and does not contain any evidence to underpin its findings. The report is wholly speculative, sir, and at its own admission, the report is subjective. The final paragraph on page 113 of the report states, and I quote, sir, "All of the assumptions laid out in the above are subjective and should be validated by a further detailed analysis prior to the ratification of the selection of the option going forward. So, and that is all that I'm asking the Assembly to approve today, with the added requirement that they also properly update the current scheme's financial estimates so a direct comparison of costs and clinical outcomes can be made. And I would hope, sir, that this new Assembly, this new Assembly that was elected by a new electoral system, albeit without the senators, but that's for another day, sir, this representative Assembly would absolutely insist upon knowing that information and understanding those comparisons before abandoning the Overdale plans. The report claims that the current plans will cost up to £115 million more, but does not provide evidence or give precise figures. The report recommends or suggests, or should I say asserts, that a new scheme will cost an estimated £635 million, sir. However, this figure does not take into account any provision for inflation, contingencies or optimism bias, ongoing Government of Jersey civil service or project team costs, writing off approximately a 51 million, sir, that is the £76 million expended on the Overdale project, less approximately £25 million of land and asset purchases already expended by the current project. And I know, sir, that ministers will say that some of that investment can be utilised, sir, and that's exactly the same position that we took in 2018 when we were referring to the spend of the previous projects. But in practice, that was very difficult. While we always learn lessons from the past, sir, I cannot see that too much of that £51 million expenditure could be transferred to the new project. It doesn't include, sir, compensation and costs relating to halting the Kensington Place housing development. And I understand, sir, that the government do plan to acquire that site for somewhere in the region of £17 million, sir. And I also happen to suspect that that is an awful lot more than the site was sold for not so long ago, sir. In fact, I think perhaps it was sold for less than half of that amount. I could be wrong, and I look forward to receiving clarification. But if that was the case, sir, there is a hefty premium for compensation paid, sir, for interfering with that project. The figure of £635 million does not take into account the loss of significant income from land and property disposals and the social benefits, and by that I mean the housing and other community and civic schemes that would be enabled by consolidating our current health facilities into one location. It does not include, sir, the cost of maintaining the current hospital facilities during the extended build time past 2026, which is when maintenance and running costs and essential investment in the infrastructure of the current hospital is set to increase at an alarming rate, sir, which are significantly more than the amounts set aside in the government plan, sir, of £5 million a year. It doesn't include, sir, the additional financial and logistical running costs or duplication costs of operating over multiple site facilities compared to a single site solution, sir. That's not an entire list, sir, but I think it's a good indication of what is missing from that figure. A multi-site hospital spread across a number of locations also disregards the valued clinical advice which strongly advocates that Jersey would be best served by a single site hospital, sir. And that is one of the lessons we did learn from previous iterations, sir, and that was not to ignore our doctors and nurses, our patients and visitors, sir, and everyone who uses the hospital. It is therefore highly likely, in fact, I would be prepared to say that it is a certainty that a proposed multi-site scheme will cost more, will take twice as long to complete, and will not produce the best clinical and patient outcomes. One of the main premises behind the report, sir, is that the Overdale project has become unaffordable. So, and whilst I accept that it may well not fall within the criteria of the £804.5 million as approved by the previous Assembly, and I still have the words of the Constable of St Lawrence ringing in my ears, daring me, sir, not in so many words, to come back and ask for more money. But it was made clear at that time that if the budget was to exceed that, the States Assembly would have to give approval. And that's certainly what I would expect to happen. This unaffordability claim, sir, raises a number of important issues and should be challenged. Firstly, contrary to assertions in the executive summary and the forward by the Minister, that in essence the Our Hospital project at Overdale is to be abandoned partly because of the changes in the financial markets. And pages 91 and 92 of the report make the following statement, sir. And I quote again, "Despite changes in the underlying financial markets environment, the broad principles of P80 2021, so that was a proposition in relation to the budget financing and land assembly programme of the Overdale project, which was Assembly approved, still apply today, sir. The strategic reserve pays the financing costs and ultimately repays the debt, sir. The report says that principle is still relevant. The chart on page 91 of the report, sir, also that chart appears in the report attached to this proposition, and using current assumptions for the interest rates and the investment returns, sir, even knowing what we know now about the markets and interest rates, demonstrates that borrowing at the level approved in P80 2021 and even up to £850 million could still be supported through the new proposed funding solution that leads to a better long-term outcome than solely using reserves, sir. And therefore, in summary, the Our Hospital project could still be funded using a modified but similar proposal to that originally put forward, and indeed under the revised proposals, the strategic reserve is projected to end up higher than originally predicted. Of course, sir, the Treasury Minister and his Treasury team should be commended, sir. Not too much, though, but for their work to produce a more flexible method of financing the project, which could be applied to either option, sir. The work being done by the Treasury could be applied to either option, and this is why I'm also asking for the new, 4 new funding options to be considered. We know things have changed since we did the sums last time, but it's not beyond the skill and of the Treasury, sir, and the Treasury Minister to come back with some better solutions for that funding, sir. This is not a short-term project. This is a long-term project, sir, and we should be mindful that delaying an essential project because of short-term financial challenges is not always the best thing to do. Otherwise, we would never have invested anything. We have financial crisis, so almost every decade, but it's important for the business of government to continue, sir. Of course, it's also important that we search out the right methods to do it. In terms of timing, sir, if the Treasury team working, who are working with the project cost consultants, and they're the very same consultants who worked on the Overdale project, so they know it well, can put together, as I understand it, somewhere in the region of 10 or 11 different scenarios in the space of a few short weeks for the infrastructure minister's report. They can certainly meet the very realistic deadlines requested in this proposition. I would expect, so in this debate, members can expect to hear ministers and the proponents of the new plan repeating a number of messages that we have heard. They will say that we must live within our means and not burden future generations with unmanageable levels of debt, sir. And they'll be saying that whilst ignoring the previously approved funding model, which is still viable in the current market, sir. They'll be saying that whilst taking a short-term funding view on a long-term project. They say that, sir, whilst not, in my opinion, understanding the financial context of such a decision. For example, Jersey will spend in excess of £20 billion in running and delivering our health service over the next 40 years, sir. That being, of course, the likely time of up to which any loan would be amortised. Against any financial backdrop, an 800 or 900 million or even more pound investment in a good hospital, sir, to deliver those essential services from is not only appropriate and affordable, sir, but it is essential. They will say, sir, that we must do what is right for Jersey whilst ignoring the expert advice of our medical professionals who have said time and time again that a single-site solution is the best option for us. It's the best option for the doctors and the nurses, for the patients and the visitors, sir. It's the best option for Jersey. They will say a multi-site option is better use of space, sir, whilst ignoring the loss of income from land disposal than the much-needed housing for islanders that would be sacrificed, sir, Kensington Place being just one example. They will say that they can use modern methods of construction when, of course, they can use modern methods of construction for Overdale. They will say that they are getting it done, sir, when it is already done and ready to go. They will say, sir, and this is my favourite, that, and the Chief Minister has quoted this, and she hope she quotes it again in the debate, sir. She will say that indecision is over. Well, in case they had missed it, sir, indecision has been over for some time. The previous Assembly had made all of the key decisions in 4 different debates, and all this government seems to want to do, sir, is to take us back to square one. So to summarise, this proposition asks the Chief Minister and the Council of Ministers to report back to the States with the following information. A direct like-for-like financial analysis of the multi-site option and the approved Overdale project to include both capital, sir, and running costs. A direct like-for-like clinical and medical analysis of the multi-site option and the approved Overdale project, sir, and additional options for funding the approved Overdale project, taking into account, of course, the different economic circumstances we find ourselves in. Requests for extra information about public projects, especially those of major importance to our community, are an established part of our democracy, sir. They are an expected part of the process of the checks and balances, and all ministers, members and civil servants know this. Questions and clarifications in the public interest are factored into government decision-making, and the government, sir, must be properly held to account by this Assembly. And to that end, sir, I make the proposition. Thank you.
Very much, Deputy. Is the proposition seconded?
Sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the proposition? Yes, I have the Minister for Infrastructure.
Sir, whatever Deputy Farnham may have to say this afternoon, I believe the Assembly is obliged to focus carefully on the proposition as worded. And before I get to the prepared part of my speech, I'd just like to point out that the claims made this afternoon about the completion time for the hospital are not correct, and the team informed me that it would be unlikely that it could be completed before the end of 2027. So I think that's an important point that needs to be made. So it's clear from the wording of the proposition, the proposer is seeking a great deal of detailed financial information, and the agreed amendment has added yet another layer. Whilst that might sound like a statement of the obvious, it's important for the Assembly to have a full understanding of what that means in practical terms and to comprehend the cumulative effect in the event of its adoption. Before elaborating, and without wishing to complicate matters unnecessarily, it should be noted that the proposition contains several ambiguities. Namely, at point A, the term running costs is unspecific in terms of that to which it relates. Does it apply to the running costs for staff, the running costs of the facility itself, or both? And what precisely is meant by the term a direct like-for-like clinical and medical analysis when applied to both the multi-site option and the approved Overdale project? Are we to analyse then compare the safety elements of the two proposals or the comparative efficiency, or both? Assuming, as I believe we must, the more comprehensive interpretation of sections A and B, the amended proposition would require the following. From a physical and constructional point of view, completion of all necessary consultations with all relevant health staff, clinicians, nurses, doctors, etc., to define the division of services between the two main sites. Completion of the review to define the type and location of new mental health facilities, and a completed set of architectural drawings for the 2 or possibly 3 sites yet to be developed. From an operational point of view, it would involve an analysis of all staff requirements for all sites, 3 or 4 in total, given our desire to retain the facilities at Lekenevay for the longer term, and an analysis of all staff requirements for the approved Overdale project. This, incidentally, is a piece of work that was never undertaken by the proposer during his term of office. From a financial perspective, it would also require a full construction cost for the 2 or 3 sites yet to be developed, a full costing for all the staff requirements for the multi-site option, and a full costing for the staff requirements of the approved Overdale project. Again, a piece of work that was never undertaken by the proposer during his previous term of office. So it's extremely important for members to understand that very few of these exercises can be undertaken simultaneously. For example, until consultation has been completed, we cannot decide on the location of each service. And until the location of each service has been decided, it isn't possible for the architects to produce a set of plans. And until the plans have been completed, it isn't possible to assess the cost of construction, and so on. The self-same principles apply to the task of defining staff numbers, precise roles and associated cost, particularly given the possibility of small areas of duplication in the case of the dual site option. In addition to all of the foregoing, Constable Crowcroft's accepted amendment now asks the project team to produce a full, separate costing of all the various works entailed in the previously agreed remodelling of Westmount, St Albans Road, Pearson Road, Victoria Park and the Inn on the Park car park, the associated land purchases, the demolition of the Jersey Bowling Club and its repositioning. This so that the total cost of these works can be subtracted from an updated costing for the Our Hospital project. I'll return shortly to the issue of timescales for these works, but for the moment I'd like to focus on what the work on the amendment would achieve. For the sake of argument, let's say that it shows a saving of £50 million. The net result then is that we'll have confirmation of the exact amount of money we can save should we be prepared to submit a new planning application in the hope, forlorn as it may be, that the planning authority will accept the construction of a 64,000 square metre hospital on a compromised site with no infrastructural changes at all. How likely is that? So I suspect the only way to achieve anything like this would be to reduce the scale of the development at the Overdale site considerably. And this is precisely what the recent 100-day review has in mind. Returning now to the all-important issues of timing, as you will have heard, a great deal of information is being requested, and much of it has to be undertaken sequentially. With this in mind, I consulted senior officers and the current Government of Jersey project team, including the acting and I hope soon to be permanent hospital project director, a highly competent civil servant with over 6 years' experience in the front line of both the Gloucester Street and Our Hospital projects. And they informed me that the earliest that this information could be produced in full is the end of September 2023. And I'll repeat that because I think it's an important date. That's the end of September 2023. Assuming, for obvious reasons, that we would have limited time to progress matters between now and the new year, we would have a meagre 69 working days from the 2nd of January to complete the requirements of the amended proposal. An absolute impossibility, in my view, by any measure. It's as simple as that. If the Assembly votes in favour of the proposal, a full 3 months will be wasted, save for the fact that we will know how much money we might save if we lived in a world where planning decisions were instantaneous and no account was taken by the Planning Authority or the Operations and Transport Directorate of the need for appropriate infrastructure. So, having made what I hope is a compelling case to reject the proposal on the grounds that, as worded, it would deliver nothing in the time available, I think it might also be helpful to comment on it in the wider context. There is little doubt that the proposer would like to proceed with the Our Hospital project as it is, without further delay. If this is the case, I believe he should have lodged a proposition to that effect, not one that is impossible to deliver within the time specified. If defeated, and common sense suggests it must, then any further proposition of this kind would need to be set within an appropriate time frame, in this case, about 9 months. Under the circumstances, that would surely be unthinkable. Sir, I think the time has come for us to make a choice, one way or the other. Either we accept the many risks associated with the Our Hospital project, massive cost, new funding requirements, lack of risk management, lack of expansion possibilities, and poor flexibility at a time of great instability, or we progress with the findings of the 100-day review, which seeks to address all of these pressing issues in a balanced and responsible manner. It's a stark but necessary decision. On that basis, sir, I urge members to reject this proposition. Thank you.
Very much. Mr. Deputy Howell. Deputy Howell.
Thank you, sir. Do you want my camera on as well? Can you see my camera or not? Can you hear me?
All we need to do is hear you, Deputy, and
Okay.
the answer is yes, yes we can.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I'm speaking against this proposition today and in support of the Council of Ministers. The Our Hospital project is not all that it was cracked up to be. I believe the previous States Assembly was badly informed and possibly misled. It was not just 3 homes that would have been destroyed, but 14. The then Senator Farnham's "not a single tree will be destroyed" is simply not the case. The all-on-one site aspect of the design also needs to be questioned. The laundry continued at Five Oaks. Insufficient mental health beds would have necessitated the continuation of a provision of St Saviour's, and there were other defects. Insufficient beds, only 175 24/7 beds. When we have a growing elderly population and the current reduction from 250 to 146 beds means that we simply do not have enough. And some of our consultants are operating on Jersey patients in the UK at the present time. There was no rehabilitation facility, no physiotherapy or occupational therapy departments, no hydrotherapy pool, not sufficient space for outpatients, and no mention of rheumatology, neurology, a dedicated diabetic centre, pain clinic or dental department. There were insufficient ward workstations for doctors and nurses, not enough barrier nursing beds, no separate entrances for clean and sterile supplies to go in and waste to go out, nowhere for Meals on Wheels, no permanent venue for the much needed Child Development Centre, and no room for expansion. The approved Overdale project cannot be officially approved as there are other omissions. There is still no waste strategy. And believe me, there would have been a lorry load of waste every minute, and yet no capacity for its disposal. It is not a done deal. Unfortunately, there was never a staffing strategy for the Our Hospital project, nor were there details of any running costs. These are serious oversights. The Deputy is now asking officials in our new government not only to come up with their own figures, but also to perform the work of the very expensive design and build team who ignored these details. And one has to ask how a design and build consortium would ever have been able to provide the island with the best financial figures, when at the time that they were contracted, no one knew what was needed in terms of size and shape or facilities. Can you still hear me? And there was no site. There was no competitive tendering. Why was this permitted? How could it have provided the best value for money? How can such a blatant waste of taxpayers' money have been allowed to occur? The funding model was never viable, and it is not viable now. I wish to do all I can to help the Minister for Infrastructure and the government to make sure that the new hospital is properly funded, future-proofed, and provides all of the services and facilities that the island and islanders need. Past iterations of plans provide details of what is needed, together with which clinical adjacencies work best. I, for one, think we should have the best healthcare service and facilities that the island can afford, and I will do all I can to make this happen. Let us not get bogged down in time wasting to achieve nothing, but go forward positively. Please vote against Deputy Farnham's proposition. Thank you.
Very much, Deputy. Deputy Barbara Wall.
Thank you, sir. I'm pleased that we're having this debate, which provides me with the opportunity to share with the Assembly my views and reasons for supporting the present review and proposal for a two-stroke multi-site health facilities. After some 44 years of working across health and social services, I feel I have some hands-on, frontline and managerial knowledge and experience to make a measured judgment and make comments as to why we need a 2/3 site health facilities. And we have for many years, we're actually been working with a 2-site facility. It's not like it's something brand new. What we need to be looking at is the general and acute hospital on its site, a non-acute step-down rehabilitation, convalescence, outpatient community health facility at Overdale, which a lot of parishioners remember Overdale with a lot of fondness, that when they'd have their operations, that's where they would be transferred to recuperate and strengthen and then be helped to go home. Lekenove, once we've used as a transitional facility, could be considered as a community health hub, incorporating GP and nurse-led services to the population out west. But this can only happen, or the consideration of what happens with Lekenove, because we're actually linked into contracts at the moment to get this done. But what happens afterwards can only be when we've got our basics right, and that is the new general hospital and a step-down facility at Overdale. I'm urging the Assembly not to just consider the costs and the financing of our hospital project at Overdale as previously approved, but you've got to consider the design and service provision. The question of the design was not included at the Stadden report, at the inquiry. The inquiry focused on the site rather than the design and provision, which was beyond the scope. Overdale Hospital site is clearly not big enough to accommodate the floor plate of our hospital design, nor can it be pivoted through a 90 degrees fit. Hence the need to move Westmount Road across the field, otherwise known as Rondell Field, and to demolish, as my colleague said, 14 homes at the top of the road, as well as the Waterworks headquarters near the crematorium. Therein lies the fundamental issue affecting the original Overdale Hospital project. It does not fit the site or provide the services that we have now. The new hospital that was being proposed by Deputy Farnham, when you actually look at the plans, there's no hydrotherapy pool, no memory clinic, speech and language services, physio department, occupational therapy, no dedicated diabetes clinic, no long-term dedicated child and development therapy centre, which is based at the William Knott, no dedicated rehabilitation ward, as in Samaray, no step-down beds, thus increasing the delayed discharge of patients who occupy beds that would otherwise be available for routine planned admissions. No dental department, nowhere for oral surgeon to work. No mention of neurology, rheumatology, stroke care and care of the elderly. Limited outpatient space and no palliative no palliative end-of-life dedicated ward. I could go on. This is an acute hospital. So the overall project has been trying to put a quart into a pint pot with no space to expand or future-proof. So what do we want? Well, we all want the same thing, and that is we want a new acute general hospital that has easy access for emergency services and patients, future-proofing and space to extend facilities if needed. Modern medical and surgical inpatient services, more space for patients to be cared for and staff to work in. Little or no bed blockers. If we have the situation at Overdale with the one site, we are in a no different situation to what we are in today, because there will be no bespoke rehabilitation services for patients to move on to following their acute episode. We need a new pathology department, pharmacy department, high dependency, intensive care, a larger A&E department. I mean, I could go on. But this can actually be achieved on the existing General Hospital site, incorporating the additional space provided where the two hotels, the Revere and the Stafford, stood. However, to develop the acute services, we need to start developing the Overdale non-acute health facility now. And as set out in the Bridging Island plan, it was agreed that that could be reused as some other health facility. So, and whether we get this Overdale non-acute service, let's get this up and running. Services can be relocated out of the existing General Hospital to the Overdale site, which would then provide the services that would be missing with the one-site hospital. Health would retain the Westmount Rehabilitation Service, the William Knott services. There'd be no need to alter the access road. The Overdale site can accommodate all these non-acute services that I've related before and more. And there'll still be enough room and land and space for future-proofing healthcare facilities and to provide space to build housing, staff housing in that area. I urge you to reject this proposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak. Deputy Mezek.
Thank you, sir. If I could start with a flippant comment and hopefully improve the quality as I go along. I have to say, I do find there is something rich in hearing some criticisms of the detail of a proposed scheme and then leading to a conclusion of putting your faith into a scheme where there is far less detail. So it may well be the case that there is an iteration of a hospital project based along the lines that's proposed by the government that could be suitable, could be viable, affordable and provide excellent healthcare services. But at this point, we don't have anything even close to the level of detail required to reach that conclusion safely. And it's for that reason that I and my Reform Jersey colleagues will support this proposition in the hope that it may lead to a position where we can get that detail and feel more secure in making a final decision. Sir, I think that there is probably out there in our island community no majority view in support of any proposal for a hospital. There may well be majorities against particular options, but there's no majority in favour of any proposed option when it's been put forward. But the thing that I think there probably is a majority feeling of is the feeling of being totally and utterly fed up of going around this merry-go-round over and over, whilst we can see the condition of the current General Hospital deteriorating over time, costing more money, us wasting even more money on consultants and going and re-reviewing this, tearing up this option, going back to the drawing board again. And I, for one, am fed up of that and don't want to play any role in prolonging that. Where we are today, with a series of approved propositions from this Assembly for an Overdale hospital, is not close to what I had in my mind years ago when we started this, but we are where we are. That is our starting point, and therefore any change to that has to be considered on that basis. And so we have, on one hand, propositions that have been passed by this Assembly, the sovereign decision-making body of the island, a level of detail that's provided with that, approvals for various parts of that proposition, a substantial amount of work that has been done to produce work for a single-site hospital solution at Overdale, or we have a political suggestion. I choose my words carefully in that, and I'll come back to that later on in what I've got to say, to go for an alternative proposal, a multi-site hospital, and for the proponents of that alternative to present an argument in their favour, which is that it could be done more affordably than what is currently agreed. But if we're going to make that decision one way or the other, I think it ought to be done on the basis of clear evidenced fact, not conjecture. So the phrase that the current hospital proposal is unaffordable is true if and only if you put caveats in that sentence. It is true that it's unaffordable in its precise terms through the precise funding permissions that have been agreed by this Assembly. I doubt that that point is contested. But to say that it is unaffordable full stop is not the case. It is the case that the government and the Assembly can re-examine funding options to find ways of putting some form of proposal together, whether that's through phased borrowing, whether it's through another mechanism, to make the approved project affordable. It may well involve taking on more debt than some people are comfortable with, and that's a political judgment at the end of the day, but it's possible. It's also possible, and this was the position that Reform Jersey had during the election, which is that with a review of the business case for the approved project, then perhaps further savings could be made to identify a way of making it more affordable. And in fact, that is something which the government's review paper does say is possible to some extent anyway. So, sir, that's the position that I'm comfortable taking, which is that if we're going to divert from that it has to be on a strong evidence base and to see some form of like-for-like comparison when we're about to undertake one of the biggest capital projects, potentially the biggest capital project that we may ever do, unless one day in the future somebody does decide to go ahead with a bridge to France, and perhaps we won't be able to afford it when it comes to it after whatever amounts of money we waste on this, sir. So I'm comfortable in taking that position, but looking at the alternative, sir, I think it's right that whoever stands up in this debate to outline their position and tries to invoke some form of mandate for them to do so, that we ought to be clear from the start what those mandates are. Our position was clear that we don't consider it in the public interest that the site selection process be reopened or that a drastic change from the approved proposals are adopted. So it's clear that there are some members who took a very different view at the election, and to those I say, fair enough. If your position to your electorate is that you didn't like the proposal that the previous Assembly agreed and you want to see a drastic change to it, no problem. You've got a democratic mandate to uphold that position. But for those who took a different position, or for those who took no very clear position in the election, something that's, I'm sure, very tempting to do when the public are so divided on this question, there is no reason whatsoever to just go along with what other politicians conclude because you didn't have a conclusion yourself or because it didn't align with the one that you were elected on. And so, sir, for the government now to say, having conducted this review, that it wants to change basically the entirety of the hospital proposal, some members of that government can justifiably claim a democratic mandate for that shift in direction, but none of us are obliged to follow it without a strong evidence base that says it is the right thing to do. And so at this point, sir, with what we've been presented in the review, presented as part of this 100-day plan, we cannot say with any certainty that if we go ahead with that, we're going to end up with a better quality health service, better quality facilities, and delivered at a more affordable rate. There simply is not the justification on paper to do that. Sir, the previous States Assembly had a future hospital review panel set up to examine the Overdale proposals as they were going through. I found myself regularly agreeing with what that review panel said and voted occasionally in favour of propositions that they brought, which would, I'm sure, have been to the great frustration of Deputy Farnham at the time. He says, no, not at all, okay, I'm sure I believe that. But so with this new Assembly, we sought to re-establish that review panel in order to attempt to scrutinise something. Until, unfortunately, not that long ago, it wasn't exactly clear what we would be scrutinising, but we managed to find a way in of providing some sort of examination of where we are. And we've published our comments paper. I hope members have had time to read it. It's not that long, certainly nowhere near as long as the review report itself. But our central finding in conducting the work, where we questioned ministers in quite a robust fashion and went through as much of the documentation as we possibly could, that our central finding in conducting our work is that the clarity we sought on the processes, the gathering of evidence, and the detail sought in order to inform decisions is not available at this stage. And our overriding conclusion in relation to that report is that in trying to provide an evidential base for a political decision, the government has developed a review which raises questions about its scope and objectivity, rather than providing certainty for decision making. And I have to say, I think that was a blunder on the government's behalf. If the government, claiming some form of democratic mandate, wanted to change the hospital proposal, they're within their rights to do that, and we as an Assembly are within our rights to determine whether the majority of us also agree with that, or whether we'd say, no, we'd prefer to stick with what we've got so far and work with that in one form, enable to move forward. But instead, they have provided for a report to be done, which seeks, and the easiest part of it to look at is the last few pages, which goes through different options and tries to relatively succinctly point out where the savings are there. And I'm afraid it raises more questions than it answers. It provides for savings based on the 108 million figure approved for the Overdale project, which is not a like-for-like comparison, which doesn't include some of the key aspects of the approved funding from the previous proposition, which you can see in the reports to Deputy Farnham's proposition on page 4, which goes through what were the project's capital costs and other budgeted costs, including things like optimism bias, client contingency, which, under questioning, we have discovered are not part of the figures included for the alternative proposal. And so straight away, that comparison's not safe. We don't know actually what the figure will finally be once those aspects are included into it. Deputy Farnham is asking us to include in a review now done to find that like-for-like basis to include both capital and running costs. And Deputy Binet and others may well want to make whatever criticisms of Deputy Farnham for that apparently not being in the original funding proposals. I have to say I find that playing the man and not the ball, because it is acknowledged even in the government's own review on this that the running costs for the multi-site option are the highest of the options that they looked in. So if we're going to be taking on a huge amount of borrowing over decades to fund a new hospital facility. At this point now that we're being asked to throw that in the bin and go back to, somebody said square one, I think it's kind of square 1.5 possibly, because at least the site is determined, although not much else is in there. Over those decades, the running costs will be substantially higher, and that will add up over time. So is it, at this point, us worth saying that that alternative is actually affordable when it will cost more in its running costs in the long term? Can we say that the figures we're given for comparison are safe when they don't include, as far as I'm aware, and I'm happy to be corrected if I've got this wrong, the extra costs that will be necessary to maintain the current General Hospital site because of the state of disrepair that it is rapidly approaching? Does it take into account the costs of land acquisition that we've spoken of for the Kensington Place sites? And of course, as previously mentioned, optimism bias and contingency costs. The figures we have on paper in front of us do not provide answers to that and leave still many questions to be answered. So I think it would have been better actually probably to have just avoided that exercise, because the decision that the government wishes to take in changing the approach is a political decision, one which they have every right to seek, but one which they have no right to expect the Assembly to simply grant because they ask for it. We can and should only grant it on the basis of evidence that the claims they make about its affordability being true. And at this point, we do not have that evidence base. So I wish to see Jersey have the best healthcare facilities we can possibly deliver on this island. I want them to be affordable as well. And where we are today is not even close to where I would have wanted us to have been through past iterations of this review process. But I don't think I would be serving my constituents well if I didn't at least play a part in trying to ensure that those questions of affordability were properly answered before we make crucial decisions in enabling changes to go ahead. Our position as a party had been we'd have preferred to have seen a more robust analysis of the business case for the currently approved scheme to try to make that more affordable, rather than going back to the drawing board and potentially ending up costing us more. And I dread to think where we may be in years in the future when that may not become realised and we end up going round this whole process over again. So, sir, I would ask members to support this proposition from Deputy Farnham.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Other member wishes to speak? Connie Tarberson, Martin.
Sorry, sir. My laptop's not working, so I'll have to try and read it off my phone. It's important for us to remember that this is not just the fault of the previous government, but the one before that as well. We've had years of inaction and mismanagement, both politically and administratively. And every time hope emerges that we may go ahead and commence building, like we all voted for in the last Assembly, we are faced with pushback or new decisions that send us back to stage one. Sir, I'm sure that our incumbent Chief Minister and Treasury Minister both remember which positions they held during prior debates on the new hospital. I have a number of concerns about the plans to the idea of a dual-site solution. And as we've heard, it's not a dual-site solution, actually. It's probably 4 sites. This idea was the official line back in 2013. But as we all know, this was later rejected following concerns from the Health, Social Security and Housing Scrutiny Panel in 2014, alongside evidence from senior clinical staff that was collected by the Hospital Policy Development Board in 2018. According to evidence collected as part of the board's review, a dual site would require extensive moving between sites by staff, and this would be, in their words, inconvenient and logically undesirable. There was clear evidence to support removing the dual site option, and I should note that this was one of the only findings to be supported by the entire Policy Development Board, including then Health Minister, former Deputy Richard Renouf. What we risk doing here is ignoring these prior reviews for the sake of political capital. Jersey is 9 miles by 5 miles. Any site is destined to be controversial. But surely our island's small size also means that we should not require more than one site on which to build a hospital. It is why I intend to support Deputy Farnham's proposition. And I apologise to the Deputy for saying this, but although I cannot say that I've been convinced by his leadership on this project over the last few years, I believe that it would be an error for this Assembly to make another about-face without clear, detailed and costed evidence to support these new plans, especially given the previous reporting available on this option. Sir, I must support this amendment because it is currently the only way to guarantee that this Assembly obtains the necessary detail on its delivery, its costing and its staffing. No government would ever adopt a proposition from a backbencher with such an omission of detail, and neither should this Assembly. However, I must also stress to both the Assembly and to the Government that we need to do better in building consensus and support for a new hospital, regardless of where it goes. Our conversations and debates about it are rooted in rejection and opposition. Piecemeal steps are made, but they arrive from the top down, doing little to build hope or address wider concerns. What these 8 years have revealed are more about what we don't want and can't have, rather than what we do need or what we can sustainably agree upon. We need to show the island that our decision will be the best option for our future and that we can build the best possible hospital this island can have because we desperately need it. Now, you may recall that there was an attempt at a deliberative approach, selecting an anonymous group of islanders to help reach a decision on where to build the new hospital, the Our Hospital Citizens Panel. Unfortunately, they were only entrusted with reaching a consensus on the criteria for site selection, not the selection of the site itself. The idea of using a deliberative body could have been a huge asset, as we've seen with the Assisted Dying Citizens Jury, had the last government or its project staff had the foresight to take that approach. There was clearly not enough faith in islanders for them to have a clear say in the site itself, and what we got was a potentially promising idea being absorbed into a bureaucracy of poor communication and apparent inaction. The facilitator of this body remains anonymous despite the concerns expressed by the previous Public Accounts Committee, of which I was a member. We do need to do better than this. We need to include the public in a way that does not treat them as a mere token in the wider process, but as a beating heart of this problem, whilst acknowledging its urgency. Our current hospital needs to be replaced as soon as possible, and we need to replace it with something that we can be proud of. Public statements will only go so far. Sir, what we need is to show the public that we, as their representatives, have listened, that we understand what they want, what they expect and what they need, and that we can provide for them with the clarity and transparency that they deserve. If this amendment is the only way that we can get there, then I am for it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Counter. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Well, I'm finding like myself déjà vu because we did have so many debates over the last my previous 3 years at the Assembly. And I looked through all my speeches that I made. Just then, Senator Farnham, and today's Deputy Farnham, was on the side of the government. And it feels a bit different today. At the same time, I can almost reread all my speeches that I've done over the all debates. I cannot agree more. And I've said several times that we need a hospital. Now, if Deputy Farnham remember, when it was just presented to the Future Hospital panel, the first draft, before it had been published, of the outlining business case, I have asked questions, because it was the consultants, why have you done comparison between these three particular things? What they've done comparison, it was do nothing, which obviously none of us knew that do nothing is the option. So why actually to think about the option do nothing when it's not the option? Second, a refurbished current hospital, obviously all of us knew that refurbishment current hospital wouldn't be the option. And the third, new build, Overdale, because what the Overdale site was then established. And I have asked why we haven't included the option built on 2 sites, why we are spending all this money paying for consultants exploring if the option do nothing or refurbishment Gloucester Street is included. We could avoid this debate. I would be happy to avoid the debate of building, but if we are going back, and I know that it's several governments, but at the same time, at outlining business case, and I do know because I was looking and reading and done public hearing, it's clearly stated that it's not compliant with the Green Book. We don't have staffing costs. We don't have revenue costs. And it's not, as Deputy Mazek said, it's the man, it's not about this. If we ask to compare like to like, I don't have revenue costs to compare to. So what I need to compare, I'm happy to present as a member of the government revenue cost, but I don't have things to compare to. So basically, I've been asked something, it's really, really difficult to produce. Constable of St. Martin mentioned PSC, and we have been together at the PSC. I'm not sure if members had a chance to look at the CNAG report published on the 13th of September 21, Governance Arrangement for Health and Social Care Follow-up. And it was clearly stated that governance arrangements for the Jersey care model and our hospital project sit outside of the main health business, and separate governance arrangement was made. We cannot have separate governance arrangements between the healthcare system and the hospital that we are building. So again, the case didn't address this. We have problem with the staffing, but the current hospital asking for 75% of single rooms. We don't have enough staff to care for current provision. 75% of the single rooms will require higher provision. But because staffing costs were not provided, how we can compare? It's really important that we'll compare apples to apples now, like to like. I'm a bit kind of confused. I understand Deputy Mazek said fed up. We don't need to prolong. Don't need to push. We need to make a decision. But what's this happening? We need to create something that wasn't created previously. Compare like that. It's again creating longer terms. So, and one more point that probably less was raised. I was surprised that Deputy Farm accepted Constable amendment. If everyone, and I read the Constable report and I cannot agree more with the Constable because for the last 2 years together we tried to help and support residents of St. Helier against the disruption and destruction of the area. For 2 years, then Senator Farm and the team made very, very clear it's no chance we can build the Overdale Hospital without the highway. And we've been told several times, we had a proposition from the Constable that we reviewed dozens of options for the road and we got back with the same highway because it's impossible. The scrutiny panel said that we can create a hospital with do nothing, and it was rejected. And now we are in the debate, and Deputy Farm accepting the amendment from the hospital, from the Constable, saying actually we might build the full Overdale scale without the road. So what was impossible 6 months ago, and what's become possible now? I'm for numbers. We had several debates, but what we've been asked to do, it's basically, from my point of view, is impossible. Thank you, sir.
Much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak? Deputy Felton.
Thank you, sir. Before I start, I will declare that I do live on Westmount Road. I didn't declare it at the beginning of the debate because my understanding was that's not a conflict of interest for the purposes of this proposition.
No, I don't think it is. It isn't a. It's simply calling for a report, in effect, and so it isn't a.
That was my understanding too, but for the purposes of transparency, I felt I should say that before speaking. But that does bring me on to a point, which is, for me, this debate and this proposition isn't a debate about the location of the hospital. This is a decision about an appropriate and proper process to follow to ensure that members have the necessary information available to them to enable them to make the right decisions. And also so that the Assembly doesn't repeat the mistakes of the past. We've heard from various members about how potentially detail was lacking in previous business cases. So for me, the idea that we would press on and go backwards on this project without having business cases that are detailed in front of us is counterintuitive to that argument. I did sit on the review panel and went through the review document in quite a lot of detail. And for me, there's not enough information within that document for us to base our decisions on. When we questioned ministers, and you will see in our comments, there were very many areas where more information would need to be supplied at a later time. There's no mention, for example, about the practicality of building on a working hospital site, where you have to demolish buildings while people are working in them. We'd need to understand how the project will be planned to ensure that the hospital staff can continue working, for example. A lot has been mentioned about the Treasury Green Book. I know that the Chief Minister, when she led the previous review panel, was quite consistent in her criticism of the previous government around the level of documentation and the type of documentation that had been presented for the previous hospital project. And I was listening to Deputy Gardner earlier, who mentioned about the business as usual option. I'd just like to take the opportunity to read a section of the Treasury Green Book, which may explain why I feel that by adopting the proposition today, it would align us more with Treasury Green Book processes. I quote, "Proposals for change must start from a thorough objective..."
Excuse me a moment. Be able to switch off that? Thank you. Please carry on, Deputy.
Proposals for change must start from a thorough, objective and quantitative understanding of the current situation. This should be informed by research and consultation with experts and stakeholders. A clear, quantitative understanding of business as usual is essential to understanding the current situation and to identifying and planning the changes that may be required. It goes on to say, business as usual, in Green Book terms, is defined as the continuation of current arrangements, as if the proposal under consideration were not being implemented. This is true even if such a course of action is completely unacceptable. The purpose of this is to provide a quantitative benchmark as the counterfactual against which all proposals for change will be compared. Business as usual does not mean do nothing, because continuing with current arrangements will have consequences and require action resulting in costs. In practical terms, there is therefore no do nothing option. So for me, what this proposition does would enable us to receive that quantitative information as outlined in the Treasury Green Book. Also, ministers have argued that this proposition would delay work on the hospital project. What is being proposed by ministers is to go backwards to a feasibility stage. So we would enter into a new project, and that project would then be in a feasibility stage because the feasibility of the new option is not known. So they will need to be doing the outline business case anyway. And part of that outline business case should indeed be comparing it to the business as usual option. So what I say to members today is that rather than us being pushed to make decisions when we don't have the relevant and required information in front of us, what we should be doing is saying to the government, go away, do your business case. You've taken the political decision to pause the project. That's your decision. And then when you have the outline business case and we have sufficient information for the Assembly to take a decision, then we are prepared to take it. So that's where I'm standing. I'd also like to draw the Assembly's attention to some of the missing information with regard to clinical risk. When I asked a written question of the Minister for Health and Social Services, I got given a very clear answer back, which said, as outlined in the review on page 12, it is essential that a further, more detailed analysis is undertaken with respect to clinical risk, cost and planning assumptions before any final decisions are ratified. We are not in a place to be ratifying final decisions to go backwards on this hospital, and I urge members to support this proposition.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak. Deputy Joseph.
Sir, I recall in the election that the future of the hospital was one of the major election issues. And I faced the difficulty of having to submit a manifesto, and 3 days later, the report came out from the planning inspector saying that the application could be, in theory, approved. We then found out that the contractor, the relations with the contractor meant that the One Hospital project couldn't be continued with because there were issues with the contractor. We have then established that the costs that this Assembly, in a rather, I was not here at the time, and it was interesting to hear the Constable, Chair of PPC, speak about previous decisions. The Assembly at the government plan last year, I think, should have been informed because they knew then what we, the new Council of Ministers, has found out, that the costs associated with the hospital, which this Assembly had approved, and it wasn't just an Assembly proposition that has been approved in a principle, it was actually a bill of supply. That means, sir, that the borrowing was authorised, the money was allocated, and all approvals had been given. What has transpired is that the money was not borrowed. Members know that the money now would be at a vastly additional expense than what it was today. So the borrowing wasn't done. The allocation of money, that some of which the borrowing would have been put in to conduct the to carry out the project, wasn't there. The costs before at this time last year, I understand, were higher, according to the information that I've been told. And then the Ukraine crisis, with the cost of living issues, has meant that there is an even greater increase in costs. And so members may well be, and I understand members' frustration, as an election candidate, one of the reasons why I stood was because I was absolutely frustrated that we weren't told as members of the public, and this assembly was not levelled with in terms of what the actual facts of the One Hospital project was. Information has come to light which is very clear that it cannot be built for reasons that were probably known this time last year, but for whatever reason weren't explained, and now have only got worse. The public, sir, are absolutely aghast at what has happened. They are aghast at the delays, and they are aghast at the decision-making and the issues of transparency. These are serious issues, which was uppermost in the many reasons in people's elections and many reasons why members of this Assembly are here today, because they stood on transparency, accountability and delivery. Deputy Farnham was the leader of the One Hospital Group, and I understand his frustration in seeing a proposition, seeing a turnaround. But the reality is, sir, that the truth is that it is the One Hospital site is not deliverable. As has been explained by the Minister for Infrastructure, who has been forensic in his work in understanding what the facts are, it has become very clear. And members that have been saying that they are going to be voting in favour of this proposition are asking and are going to be approving a proposition for a like-for-like financial analysis of the multi-site option. The difficulty is, as I understand, sir, that the costs associated with running the One Hospital site was not even there. So it is not possible, in fact, I question whether or not it's actually possible to advance and approve a proposition of which the A and B, in other words, A, the One Hospital, and the B, what the Council of Ministers is trying to advance in an open and transparent and speedy way, getting what the public wants, which is a hospital, the A isn't there. The numbers aren't there. The state's decision of the budget allocation with the money sitting in, an extraordinary decision as a former Treasury Minister to see a proposition made which is a budget allocation authorising a budget out with a budget proposal. In my experience, I've never seen anything like it, apart from a fiscal stimulus programme. But the previous proposition simply is invalid. It can't be done. It's not been done. The alpha of the comparative data is not there for the running of the hospital. Members are aware. They know, each and every one of this Assembly must know that the baseline costs of building One Hospital is simply not the numbers that were approved by the states. So what Deputy Farnham is asking to do is impossible for a number of reasons. I also politely suggest, sir, that the counterparties, the actual counterparties, the preferred arrangement with the contractor is also impossible to deliver because there's been some sort of issue with the relations with the actual contracting party. So I understand members' frustration and their scolding of the current Council of Ministers, who are always going to be held accountable for decisions. But you can only do what you can do, and you can only do what you can do with the data that you've got, and the data isn't there. The comparative cost is not there. The money is not there. The money can't be borrowed. It simply cannot be done. And so members are faced with a dilemma. Are they going to allow the Council of Ministers, with the best of intentions, given the circumstances, given the enormous backlog of years of delay, which members have spoken about, and I have been part of previous assemblies which has tried to advance matters. I've been known to advance matters such as police stations and other matters. I'm quite familiar with these issues. and all the scoldings that one gets. I see the housing minister in dealing with housing. Every single infrastructure project, whether it's the incinerator, guilty as charged, sir, involved in that. Police station, guilty as charged, sir, involved in that. But in each stage of these issues, we know we need to make decisions factually. We need to make decisions with the best of intentions, with our oath of office in mind. And sir, this proposition by Deputy Farnham simply cannot be done. And if it is passed by the Assembly, we will need to remember the words of the Infrastructure Minister. There's a clue in the title. He is the Infrastructure Minister. He is responsible. I don't know why the last government put the responsibilities into other people's hands, but they did. But we know that our Infrastructure Minister is seized upon these issues, is dealing with them, and under the direction of the Council of Ministers and our Chief Minister, under the guidance of the Treasury Minister, is advancing matters as quickly, as expeditiously and properly and transparently as possible. So I'm afraid, sir, it is impossible to accept criticism. One is accountable, as there's one word in French, so it's called responsabilité. That is responsibility, accountability and liability. The Council of Ministers is accountable and takes responsible for the issues of advancing what is needed in the island, which is a hospital, as the Connétable has said. Now, is the state going to make a decision to do what we have been doing in the last 10 years or more of putting decisions off and delaying matters? I ask members to continue to have confidence in the Council of Ministers and the Infrastructure Minister and the Treasury Minister and our Health Minister and our Chief Minister to advance the solving of our hospital issues without the frustration, without this request, which I understand why Deputy Farnham is doing it. He's, for whatever reasons, but it is impossible to achieve. And if it is passed, it is going to have enormous consequences of further delay. If this proposition isn't passed, as it shouldn't be, members can be assured that the new government, as said, will advance in transparency and give the right information at the right time as soon as possible and solve the issue that we were elected to solve. Action, not words. A delivery government. And it's 10 minutes, sir. I will sit down and ask members to please reject this Assembly, to encourage the Infrastructure Minister to continue his work in conjunction with others, in conjunction with experts, so that we cannot stand here in another government plan debate in another 2 or 3 years' time and not deliver what islanders need. And if ever there was a reason, surely we understand post-COVID and post-everything else of why we need a hospital that works with services now under the guidance of our Health Minister that is not only just a building, but what goes on inside. So I urge members in the strongest and most respectful terms possible to reject the amendment. Reject the proposition.
Thank you very much. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Yes, Conor Harbison, one.
Thank you, sir. I think what we must remember is that regardless of what Deputy Joseph says, it was passed by the last Assembly. The reputed £118 million been spent so far, surely that which are taxpayers' money, surely that the people of Jersey deserve the right to know what this new hospital is going to cost. And that's all the proposition is asking for. Come back, you tell us it's going to save God knows how many £100 million, come and prove it. That's all we need to know. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Conor Harbison, John.
Thank you, sir. So in looking at this proposal, I looked back at my contribution, like others did, from the debate in October last year. I opened my comments then with that I think we need to get on and build at Overdale, but importantly, not at any price. So I spoke then about the fact that none of us are experts in every field. we have to rely on information and data presented to us. Some of us are experienced in compiling business cases and or evaluating business cases. The business case that was approved was lacking in such fundamental and basic information, in my opinion, would never have been accepted in the commercial world. Despite Deputy Farnham's assertion in his opening remarks that there was detailed information in the previous plans, the business case was lacking in information such as revenue costs, staffing requirements, potential income forecasts, justification for size, justification for the amount of car parking. Sir, a business case lacking such basic information and data wouldn't even get to an executive meeting, in my experience, let alone presented to a board for endorsement. Yet members were asked to support £804 million on a trust me, it will be okay scenario. We saw the change of the lavish roof, that didn't provide any savings. We saw the reduction in size, no savings, smaller car park, no saving. So the Deputy earlier today questioned the new Infrastructure Minister about the advice he has taken. Well, I would question the Deputy about the advice he took, and I'll give him an example. The previous project's clinical director told us that 40% of islanders had private health insurance. But just a week before that comment, sir, the Health Minister of the day wrote in a written answer to a question that the figure of people with private health was actually lower than 25%. That is a significant difference, sir, and when you saw the size of the new hospital, that assumption of 40% had been made. Sir, islanders and taxpayers expect us to make a reasoned and professional decision and to act responsibly with their money. They may not agree with our decisions, but generally they will respect them if they're made on sound information and data. Nobody is suggesting, sir, that we build a new hospital without coming back to this Assembly with all the information that's needed to make a decision. Sir, shortly after my election, I met with the then Chief Minister and the then Deputy Chief Minister for a briefing on the project that was approved. I asked them what kind of facility would we get for £200 million less. Sir, again, it's not uncommon to be told in commerce that you've got 20 or 30% less to spend on a project and be sent away to find a solution, pretty similar to what the Infrastructure Minister has done. I was told then that we wouldn't get the hospital that we want. Sir, we now have a Minister who has got commercial experience, and he has come to us with what I believe is a workable solution that manages risk in a far more appropriate manner. Another question I asked, sir, at that meeting was about the plan for resilience. I'll remind members that when the planning inspector Staddon rejected Gloucester Street, he was told not to review a two-centre option, and that was confirmed by the consultant that a two-centre solution last time wasn't considered. Why? We heard from Deputy Feltham about the Green Book, and yes, we did question the use of the Green Book, because if it had actually been followed, then a two-centre option would have been considered, as well as the single centre. And I believe, like Deputy Feltham, there's a lot of work to be done in this area. We were told last October, sir, about the silent majority who just want us to get on and deliver. Well, sir, I've said before, we do need a hospital and we need to get on with it. But we've got a responsibility. During the recent election, I have to say, the hospital featured very highly on St John parishioners' questions. So I met just 2 people who supported the previous decision. And I knocked on every door in that parish. I spoke to dozens of people who did not support the scheme that had been approved. Sir, I've heard people say that it's too far between the 2 sites. Really? You can actually see one site from the other. Doctors don't appear to have any problem travelling between the current facility and the Lido, or the current facility and the Little Grove. They manage quite well. Deputy Howell spoke about the things that haven't been included in the Our Hospital Site project. It's vital that they're included in the project, or we find solutions for those things. So any comparison would need to include those things. Deputy Ward spoke about her extensive experience in health spanning more than 4 decades. So Deputy Farnham spoke about the benefits of a single-site hospital. I would remind him that there are actually many benefits from having two sites. From a risk perspective, having two facilities is a good thing. One health expert who I've known for a good number of years has always stated you shouldn't put all of your eggs in one basket. So that man has worked with 4 American presidents and is an ambassador for the Danish Health Authority. Having the ability to split private and public services is also, in my opinion, a positive. Too many private appointments have had to be cancelled at the General, leading to some surgeons moving their private practice to the UK. In other jurisdictions, 2-site hospitals are sited miles apart. There are probably campuses that are larger than the area covered by the proposed 2 sites. Sir, we all received a copy of a letter from the former Health Minister that has been published in today's local paper. Sir, the Minister wrote about some of the challenges with the existing building. I'll remind members, it was that Minister who closed Samaray Ward, therefore reducing the bed space available and therefore adding pressure. I fully agree with Deputy Mezek that the site selection can't be reopened. We have the Overdale site and we have the Gloucester Street site. Due to the urgency of providing new facilities, we simply can't start from scratch again. Where I disagree with Deputy Mezek is that the proposal simply can't be delivered in the time given, as stated by the Infrastructure Minister. In recognition of the remarks made by my colleague to my left, the Constable Sir Martin, perhaps an amendment to this proposal moving the timetable to the end of September would have been a better solution. In terms of safe comparisons, the Deputy spoke about playing the man and not the ball. Sir, I raised my concerns in the original debate about the lack of detail, and I have no issue raising them now, as I believe it is the ball that is in play and not the man. I don't believe in rejecting this proposal we are giving the green light to a development without the detail. On the contrary, I expect the Minister to bring back fully costed plans, but not within 3 months, but within 9 months. I believe 9 months, sir, is a realistic time expectation. One of the most attractive elements of the revised plan is to be able to do things in a staged way. Having the build project in phases allows more contractors to tender for the work, making it more competitive when it comes to pricing. I'm delighted that the Deputy has accepted the Constable's amendment, because in my extensive logistics experience, that superhighway, sir, was never needed and hopefully never will be. Sir, I ask members to reject the proposal and allow the team to focus up on drawing their plans.
Thank you, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I speak as somebody who's worked at the front line, who's managed clinical services, who's been a director of nursing in 3 large organisations, who's been a chief executive of an NHS trust of similar size to the services that we're operating now. And what I want to talk to the Assembly about is that in that experience, what I've known is that healthcare constantly evolves, and the delivery of that healthcare constantly evolves. So it is likely that whatever building facilities that we end up with, they will change in the future. And the reason I make that point is because we need to have facilities that can respond and be flexible to this change in the delivery of healthcare going forward, and to be able to adapt as and when those changes occur. Of course, we will need to refresh the current functional briefs and determine the optimum split of services. Of course, we will need to remodel the workforce. Of course, we will need to make sure that patients are first and foremost in our thinking as to how we deliver modern healthcare facilities. While many clinicians were in support of the single site, many have thrown their support behind the change in direction. And that is to be welcomed, because that shows that staff themselves recognise the evolution of healthcare, particularly the advantages that can be gained by developing the technological solutions that support them in their everyday work. The requirement for a new hospital is not in dispute. With every year that passes, we know that we're spending millions of pounds on backlog maintenance, And so it is absolutely vital that we expedite the work on our new health facilities as quickly as possible. We need to move on. We need to resolve the issues of struggling to attract a workforce that doesn't want to come and work in facilities that are falling apart. We need to be able to offer a service that is operating in modern, fit-for-purpose facilities, and those facilities will be adaptable according to the changes that are presented. The options around multi-site facilities will deliver safe clinical services. So please do not be under any assumption that it will be unsafe or it won't be manageable or there will be operational difficulties between it. Most healthcare systems, modern healthcare systems, find ways to actually become efficient and effective at operating around a multi-site option. One of the things that I want to say to the Assembly, sir, is that we have to make sure that we can come to an agreement quickly, and I agree with the Constable of St John, around the assurances that we need to give to the public and patients about the cost as well as the clinical effectiveness of the care that we're providing. And I would urge the work that we do to come to fruition quickly so that we can assure the public that we have actually got the right model of service in place for them. And I would urge members to reject this proposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? Deputy Scott.
Thank you, sir. This has been an interesting debate with many interesting and valid points made on each side. And I think the real problem here is process. Because, as was mentioned by scrutiny, by the corporate, by the rather hastily put together Future Hospital panel, what we really probably should be debating here is the revoking of a proposition that was passed by the former States Assembly. And that hasn't actually happened. This isn't what this is. And that would be the proper way, in the same way as Deputy Farnham and Deputy Gorst are seeking to revoke a former States Assembly to remove senators. That would have been the thing to do, but that's not what's happened here. So instead we find we are debating an amendment that would affect the government plan, that would affect the budgeting. And ultimately, I think we just have to be quite honest that a lot of what is really informing our positions are basically how we feel about the hospital itself, about the way the actual plans, what our electorate have told us about it, how we feel about the public spending generally, how we feel about multi-site hospitals. And in fact, there seem to be two schools of opinion there. One that is actually saying it must, it's so much better for the patients to be one single site. Another saying, well, actually, it's better. In fact, why would you actually have your maternity ward in an area where people might get infected? All these questions that perhaps have never really been resolved because of the original processes, because of past processes. Each time a hospital proposal has been considered by the States Assembly. And what I kind of can probably understand about the current Minister for Infrastructure is that he's not really so great with all this kind of red tape and the processes. He's just being quite pragmatic about trying to do something that will get a hospital that actually is reasonably within our means within a short time. And instead, I'm hearing people talking about valuing accountability, delivery and transparency, outline business cases, and as well as public spending. And I'll be interested to see whether those issues come up when I actually am bringing my own amendment to the government plan in the form of Amendment 14. But that is a different story. It's quite interesting how inconsistent people's positions can be on different propositions. So I have listened to this debate. I do know what my own constituents feel about the hospital and about the process and the way it's gone about, and the sense of relief that a lot of people have actually expressed to me about the fact that the Minister for Infrastructure, the Council of Ministers, have actually decided to review this decision and use the advice of somebody who can actually produce something within a shorter time. Yes, I know the clinicians actually, or certain clinicians, have actually expressed a certain point of view about what they would like. And I also know that this is indeed an island 9 miles by 5. So our clinicians will not be travelling huge distances to get from one hospital building to the other. So I will be, regretfully, Deputy Farnham, voting against your proposition. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition? No other member wishes to speak. Conor St Helier.
Thank you, sir. As members will know, if they've read the report accompanying my amendment, on 3 occasions I attempted to change the course of the previous hospital project by removing what came to be called the superhighway from it. I don't think I coined that term, but it certainly became one that is quite current. And that is why, to be consistent with those 3 amendments, I put an amendment to Deputy Farnham's proposition, because I knew I wouldn't be able to support it while the risk of carving up People's Park, Westmount Road, the bowling club, the trees, and so on was still a risk. The disappointment for me from the 100-day review, although of course it went on a bit longer than 100 days, by government, was that the outcome wasn't at all clear-cut. I still don't know whether the new multi-site option being pursued by government will lead to that collateral damage to St Helier's environment and to its heritage, which I have been fighting against for the last several years. And that's why I believe it's important, if we are going to have this review of the true costs involved, that sum is known, because clearly it may well influence what we do in the future. I'm very grateful to members of the public, to former Health Minister Deputy Renner for his letter in today's paper, and to the Constable of St Clement, who can't be with us today, but who has emailed us with his reservations about proceeding without having more financial detail. I'm also aware that Deputy Feltham, as chair of the Public Accounts Committee, who spoke, I think, very well, very cogently, she doesn't want to be in a position with her committee to have to review with hindsight, because that's what PAC does, of course. They can't stop things happening, really. They can only look at the disasters after they have taken place. And I've been in this assembly long enough to know that there sure have been some disasters when it comes to capital projects. I don't know whether Deputy Ozef was being ironic when he referred to the incinerator, but that's certainly one of them. And I've just come back from a Crown Dependencies meeting in our sister island in Guernsey, and they showed us very well why we made a big mistake in pursuing that project and not thinking really carefully before we went ahead. So I believe there is definitely merit in Deputy Farnham's proposition. I think it's a shame that some members have been playing the man, not the ball. That's seems a very timely phrase to be using in these days of the World Cup. But as far as his changing his mind about the so-called superhighway goes, Deputy Farnham can, I'm sure, reply for himself as to why he's had a change of heart about that. I will be supporting his proposition. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak on the proposition?
So there's very few minutes left and we've got a very long week. Can I call for the adjournment so that other people may want to speak fresh in the morning? Thank you, sir.
Well, let me just sound out the assembly. Does any people indicate if they're intending to speak, and obviously if they haven't already spoken? Well, there are at least 2 speeches, which may be of some significant length, together, of course, with the summing up. Deputy Warder is entirely right. Normally I wait, standing orders require I wait until past. but I don't think there's anything wrong in considering the question of the adjournment now. So
May
do you,
I propose the adjournment, sir?
well, I think the deputy proposed the adjournment, but I'll take it. It's proposed and seconded. Members agree? Very well. State stands adjourned now until 9 tomorrow. Sorry.